I was writing a diary in the American comics, and the Avengers collapsed. 2008, Lighthouse Country, New York, inside the Stark Group's headquarters. Tony Stark was looking at the Stark Group's quarterly earnings report compiled by Assistant Pepper. He just looked at it twice, and he was not interested. Originally he was not interested in this kind of chore. All along, it was handled by his Uncle Obadi and Assistant Pepper, who was only responsible for the main direction and the leader of the scientific research department. Now in the entire Stark Group, the most profitable weapons and projects are basically developed by his leaders. That's why he doesn't take care of things, eats, drinks and enjoys life everywhere, and the shareholders can tolerate him. Suddenly, in front of him, there was an extra diary. Yes, just like that, appeared in front of himself out of thin air. He rubbed his eyes, it was indeed out of thin air, and suddenly appeared in front of him. Jarvis, scan the entire office immediately to see if anything is out of the ordinary. Tony Stark spoke immediately. Scan complete, sir, nothing unusual found. Jarvis's voice came. How is it possible? Tony Stark looked at the notebook that appeared in front of him without warning in shock. Could it be some kind of magic? This sudden diary made him feel that his three views had directly exploded. How could there be such a thing? The materialist worldview was blown up. Thinking of this, Tony Stark hurriedly said, Jarvis, scan this notebook. After scanning, it's just a normal notebook, sir. Jarvis's voice came again. Tony Stark breathed a slight sigh of relief, and then picked up the notebook in front of him, but saw that it was the diary of a person named Luo Chen. Luo Chen. Chinese. Looking at the style of the name, it is clearly East Asian style, looking like Chinese. But then he saw the contents of the diary, and his face immediately darkened. June 6th, it's sunny today, waiting for the first day of Tony Stark's kidnapping. June 7th, it's cloudy today, waiting for the day after Tony Stark is kidnapped. June 7th, light rain, waiting for the third day of Tony Stark's kidnapping. Luo Chen, you can't continue to fall, you have to fight hard. Struggle a hair, wait for Tony Stark to be kidnapped, take advantage of the low to buy a wave of stocks, wait for him to switch to new energy and then throw it out. A lifetime of expenses will be earned, who is still working hard. On the 8th day of June, I suddenly remembered that a foreign traverser like me should not attract the attention of GUE, should it not, even if there is any change, the first time to find me should be Kong. June 9th, so speechless, why did it descend in such a dangerous world? In the future, that purple potato essence snapped its fingers. How can I live? Do I have to expect the reunion? The diary was recorded here, and Tony Stark's face was extremely ugly. The diary begins with cursing him for being kidnapped and waiting for him to be kidnapped. It seemed like it was foreshadowing something to him again. Sir, I think you really need to strengthen your security forces. At this time, Jarvis's voice appeared at the right time. Tony Stark narrowed his eyes. He thought about it. Usually in his mansion, or in the company, the security force of the Stark Group is relatively sufficient, and there is no problem in entering and exiting normally. But Tony Stark, is not a person who keeps to himself, eating, drinking and gambling everywhere. It is simply poisonous, and at this time, he often only carries one bodyguard, that is, Harpy, and this time is when he is the most insecure. How insecure this country is, just from the tens of thousands of people who die from guns every year. At this time, even Tony Stark, who has always been unafraid, finally began to be a little afraid at this time. I know. Tony Stark is a little unwilling, but as a top rich man and one of the masters behind the scenes, he doesn't easily joke about his safety. However, a thought suddenly popped into his mind. If this world is so dangerous, why not make a warframe to protect himself? Tony Stark first pressed the thought in his mind and began to analyze the contents of this diary. If it was just a diary picked up on the side of the road, he wouldn't care at all, but this diary was in front of him, suddenly appeared, showing a supernatural side. This made it impossible for him not to pay attention to the contents of the diary. Especially since it is also related to his safety. Jarvis, build a brand new archive. The name of the file is Luo Chen. Tony Stark spoke. Okay sir, a new profile has been established. Jarvis is still fast. Make a hypothesis. If the person represented by this notebook is not an ordinary person, behind it represents some kind of supernatural ability, such as magic, what witchcraft, or what Cthulhu, whatever, this mysterious existence. Let this notebook appear in front of me. For what? What could it be for? Tony Stark touched the mustache on his chin and muttered. Is it for warning, or is it to achieve some kind of goal? Tony Stark thought for a moment. If the person behind this scene really existed, then suddenly putting this notebook in front of him was either to be kind to him and warn him that someone was going to attack him recently. Or is it unfriendly to him and wants to use the notebook to scare him, such as making him cancel a certain trip, so that some projects fail and some business cannot be won? It's all possible. Putting aside the fact that the other party could do such an outrageous thing, Tony Stark thought about it and didn't know what the problem was. And is this person behind the scenes someone else, or is it this Luo Chen? This is also where Tony Stark has doubts in his heart. Jarvis, what does this crosser mean, you know? Tony Stark asked. According to the information now searched on the internet, the general sense of the crosser is the name of the protagonist in some novels or comics after crossing into another world, sir. Jarvis replied. In other words, if you set up a hypothesis that what this diary says is true, then this Luo Chen is also the so-called traverser. Speaking of this, Tony Stark's eyes suddenly flashed sharp. So that means that the world we are in now may be the world of some story. After Tony Stark got this conclusion, he suddenly felt extremely absurd. What the hell is this conclusion? Just thinking that his world might be fake in a certain story, he felt that his three views were about to explode. This matter is placed on anyone's body, and they will feel that their three views have completely exploded. Sir, I am more inclined to say another way of saying about this matter, which may be that some story of our world is projected into the mind of the author of another parallel universe because of some unknown stir. Jarvis spoke. So, you tend to think it's true? Tony Stark asked. I don't have any judgment, just an analysis based on the existing situation. Jarvis continued to say calmly. Tony Stark is not unable to accept his own world. It may be the story written by others, although this subverts the three views for him, but this huge world, under science, well, and what happened just beyond science, anything can happen. He just can't accept that his own character and his own knowledge are obviously obtained through his own efforts, and the results may be given by others. This is simply unacceptable to him, who has always been proud, even arrogant. Well, whether our world is a story written by someone else, let's not talk about this. Let's make a hypothesis first. Assuming that this thing exists, then I was kidnapped. It is likely to be something that happens in the future. Tony Stark immediately had a judgment. And once I am kidnapped, Stark Group's stock price will definitely plummet, and he will take the opportunity to absorb it, and then after I don't know why I turned to the development of new energy, he pulled the stock up again, he sold it, and he could make a big profit. Yes, sir. Judging by the contents of the notebook, it seems that this is indeed the case. Jarvis replied. Since he is so sure, I will definitely be kidnapped, and he also made plans to use my kidnapping to make a big profit later, which doesn't look like a fake. Tony Stark was silent for a moment and said. But the only good news, probably this time the kidnapping, should be a thrill for me, and even turn to new energy. It seems that I should have made a lot of progress in the development of new energy. Tony Stark has never doubted his intelligence. He was mainly studying munitions, but new energy is not completely uninvolved. If you switch to new energy, there should be a big breakthrough soon. And what he said, this is a dangerous world, obviously it should not be a trivial matter like me being kidnapped. Tony Stark said. Jarvis, build a brand new file name, World Crisis. Since he specifically mentioned that this world is dangerous, then in the future, we are likely to encounter some dangers, such as, what purple potato essence, and that purple potato essence snapped fingers. I think it should not really snap fingers, but some kind of dangerous thing. Yes, sir, the file has been established. Jarvis said. Also, in the world's network, search Luo Chen and rule out all possibilities. Tony Stark said. Please later. Jarvis's voice came. A moment later, Jarvis's reply appeared. According to all the information that can be retrieved, the world is called Luo Chen, and it meets the relevant possibilities, and one has been screened out, grew up in an orphanage in New York, just graduated from college this year, his identity, the procedures are complete, but there is only one problem. There are relatively few traces of his related life, so the probability of him being the so-called traverser is very high. Go find him right away. Tony Stark just finished saying this, and suddenly only felt a severe headache, and it took a long time to slow down. Tony Stark immediately realized that something was wrong, and then said, "As long as I have the idea of wanting to find this Luo Chen, there will be severe pain. I'm afraid it is some kind of mechanism, the mechanism that protects Luo Chen, so that I can't go to him." Tony Stark quickly accepted this mysterious side setting, and also realized that his headache must be directly related to his desire to find Luo Chen. "Sir, it seems that this mysterious existence is even more powerful than we thought," Jarvis replied. "Since there is no way to find him for the time being, then try everything to monitor him." Tony Stark clutched a diary in his hand, his eyes thinking. "Can't go to this Luo Chen to ask clearly, then there is only one way left, slowly through this diary, know what will happen in the future. If your own world is really a so-called story world." At the same time, in an apartment in New York, Luo Chen is taking inventory of his own net worth, although he is an orphan, but his predecessor's parents also left him millions of assets, and when he becomes an adult, he can withdraw them, and now he has taken them all. Even the apartment was sold together, and the rest was after Tony Stark was kidnapped. After Stark Industries' stock price plummeted, he was good at bottoming. At that time, once you come and go, you can at least mix tens of millions of net worth. $10 million in the country of lighthouses is still quite valuable. At least you can initially achieve financial freedom. If not, roll up the money and run back to the motherland. After all, this is the world of Marvel, so the main battlefield has always been in the lighthouse country, and the most dangerous place is also in the lighthouse country. As long as you leave the lighthouse country, you can generally avoid the most dangerous place. However, at this time, he also awakened this god-level diary system and asked him to write a diary. But at first he refused. After all, who keeps a diary for a serious person? Of those who are famous for keeping diaries throughout history, there are several who have good reputations. But soon he still followed, because as long as he insisted on writing a diary and signing in, he could draw a lottery, and he glanced at the lottery thing. There were too many good things. From high-tech weapons, to some kind of superpower, to some kind of magic practice notes, to the design drawings of some equipment, and so on. All in all, with these, even in this extremely dangerous world, he can at least obtain a certain self-preservation ability. This made him change his mind. Originally he planned to keep a low profile and not attract the attention of GUE and the Time Mutation Authority, but now he also had to fight for it. In this world, no one can understand better than Luo Chen the danger and horror of this world. It can be said that the whole world is full of dangers, when superheroes may be such as Tony Stark snapped his fingers and died. There are also superhero rotations that conform to the new era, resulting in the death of superheroes, and there are also superheroes whose cosplayers outside the fourth wall die, or scandals that also lead to superhero deaths. But what is more dangerous than being a superhero in the Marvel Universe is to be a huge and bright target for ordinary people, especially a lighthouse country like New York, which is even more dangerous in danger. I don't know how many gangsters run amok, and supercriminals are also lurking in them. Fortunately, this is in Marvel. If it is in DC, then the darkness of Gotham City can almost make everyone despair, although that Batman is punishing rape and eliminating evil on the surface, but he has never been ruthless to criminals, resulting in criminals escaping from prison again and again, making big events again and again, and countless people dying tragically, which is not as important as the principle of not killing in Bateman's heart. Serious people who write diaries, but for self-preservation, if they are not serious, they are not serious. Luo Chen sighed. He didn't know that he had been punished by this unscrupulous system, and now a copy of the diary had appeared in Tony Stark's hands. He didn't have time to think about it that much, and now he's going to work. Today he received a makeup job. After all, he is also a Harvard graduate, just graduated this year, and should have been on the way to various interviews. But who let him know a way to make a fortune, and suddenly lost interest in various interviews, just took some makeup work scatteredly. In the lighthouse country, where the class is middle class or even middle class oriented, they generally attach more importance to the education of their children, and when they roll up, they are not bad at all in the country compared to the previous life, and only the people at the bottom will let their children eat, drink and have fun every day. And which superhero with superpowers is still hard to be a worker? No one will use their photos to exchange money, no. Today he was going to give a makeup lesson to a little girl, and he followed the address given to him on the previous contact number and found the door. It is a middle-class community with a relatively good security environment, in the lighthouse country, where the poor, ordinary people, middle class, elites, and rich live. It is a clear distinction, as if a completely different world. The one who opened the door was a white middle-aged woman, and when he opened the door and saw Luo Chen, he was not surprised, and a somewhat kind smile appeared on his face. An Asian, or an East Asian, with a high degree and good knowledge, is itself one of the stereotypes of East Asians, especially Chinese. And Luo Chen behaved very much in line with this impression. Gentle, even looks very tender, like a teenager. Mrs. Stacy, huh? Luo Chen asked politely. Yes, you are Luo Chen. Mrs. White said with a smile. Come in, I didn't expect you to look younger than you thought. She is not afraid that Luo Chen is fake. After all, it is a person invited on a regular tutoring website, and all kinds of certificates are complete. My daughter is 16 years old and is in high school, but she is not doing well in mathematics. I hope you can give her more tutoring in mathematics. You Asians are not very good at this. Mrs. Stacy said. No problem. Luo Chen smiled and said, he can graduate from Harvard University, even in the lighthouse country. This is also the king of roles, tutoring a high school student in mathematics, small meaning. Luo Chen followed Mrs. Stacy into a girl's boudoir, where a white girl who looked about 15 or 16 years old was scratching her ears and cheeks at the math problems in front of her, looking sad. Gwen, this is the teacher Luo I invited for you, who is specially responsible for tutoring you with math problems. Mrs. Stacy said. The girl raised her head, and immediately saw a face as handsome as a knife, looking gentle and handsome, and her heart suddenly jumped. I almost couldn't help but blush slightly, and I couldn't help but think in my heart. How handsome. At this time, Luo Chen was also a little dumbfounded. Gwen Stacy. That Spider-Man's famous girlfriend. The unlucky bastard in The Amazing Spider-Man. He didn't expect New York to be so small, and his tutor turned out to be his future Spider-Man girlfriend. Teacher Luo is good. Gwen quickly got up and said. Sit down. Luo Chen said quickly. Teacher Luo, if you can the tutoring course start now? Mrs. Stacy said. It's nature. Luo Chen said directly. Then you talk first, I'll go down and prepare some snacks for you. Mrs. Stacy spoke. Luo Chen nodded, and then glanced at the very hard math problems that Stacy was dealing with. To be honest, the mathematical level of ordinary people in Lighthouse Country is indeed very poor, and the depth of teaching in school is much worse than that of the motherland in the previous life, but this does not represent the level of elites. Generally, what the elites above the middle class learn often exceeds the level of teaching in the school, but for Luo Chen, it is still just a small meaning. He found out the ideas and methods of understanding the body in 3 or 2 clicks, and immediately explained it to Gwen. While listening, Gwen looked at this handsome face that was close at hand, and couldn't help but show a bit of adoration on his face. Meanwhile, inside the chairman's office in Stark Tower in New York, Tony Stark heard Jarvis's voice. Sir, the diary seems to have been updated. When Tony Stark heard this, he immediately put down his work and quickly picked it up and looked at it. Sure enough, behind the original diary content, a completely new text appeared. June 10th, sunny day, I went. New York turned out to be so small, I just casually helped individuals make up classes, and I could actually meet Gwen Stacy, the famous unlucky EGGDY heroine. Unlucky egg, heroine. Gwen Stacy. At this time, Tony Stark remembered the name, because he decided that if the assumption that this universe was a story universe was true, then he must be the male protagonist. It can also be seen from the words in Luo Chen's diary before. After all, he was kidnapped, and then out of danger. His career not only did not plummet, but took advantage of the situation and developed a new field. This is not the protagonist treatment. What is the protagonist treatment? He just wanted to ask, who else? In other words, if he is the male protagonist and this Gwen Stacy is the female protagonist, it is likely to be his future lover. But it's his heroine. Why is it an unlucky heroine? Will there be a bad ending with him? This can't help but make Tony Stark think of some bloody Hollywood movies. In these Hollywood movies, as the protagonist's relatives and friends, is not a good career, and even often has accidents. Shouldn't it mean this? Immediately afterwards, he saw that new words began to appear on the originally blank paper, and this time he saw the words appear out of thin air on the notebook, which made him more sure that this would not be the result of someone's prank. This notebook is indeed the embodiment of some kind of extraordinary power, not an ordinary person. This Gwen is so beautiful, she is indeed a goddess in the hearts of countless people in her previous life. If there is a chance, maybe it can also prevent her tragedy. But her age is completely wrong. If I'm not mistaken, Peter Parker is only a few years old at this time, still a little fart who has not grown hair. How is Gwen so old? So how to pair with Peter Parker? Isn't this universe 1999? No, I obviously saw Tony Stark's smelly fart guy on TV. He and Robert Downey Jr. are at least 8 points similar. This is definitely the 1999 universe, absolutely can't be Tony Stark of other universes. Looking at this paragraph, Tony Stark only felt that his scalp was numb, and the amount of information was huge. He could understand that the things recorded in this diary were probably written casually, where to write wherever they wanted, but the amount of information revealed in these casual sentences was ridiculous. First of all, it proves that he just guessed wrongly. He may be the protagonist, but he may not be the only protagonist, because this heroine Gwen Stacy is not paired with him, but for the little fart named Peter Parker. Although he has not seen it yet, and he does not know who this Peter Parker little fart is, it is enough to confirm some of his guesses. This also made him breathe a sigh of relief. Just now when he thought that his official match might be this little girl named Gwen's Daisy, the first person that came to his mind was not someone else, but his assistant, Pepper. Only now did he really find that he seemed to have a little different idea about Pepper, at least not in the ordinary sense of the boss's view of his subordinates. All in all, when he just knew his official match, he almost instinctively rejected the one named Gwen Stacy, because the official match was completely different from those who only had Dewey love before. Those women who only have Dewey love, they are great to give some money, and then they don't help the other party rub some of their own traffic. For him, there is no loss at all. But the official match is different. That is a woman who wants to follow her for the rest of her life. But fortunately not. And the next words let him sweat upside down. He just guessed that the world he was in may be a certain story world, but now he got the exact answer from the diary. It is indeed a certain story world, and even the number of the universe is there, the 1999 universe. Also, this Luo Chen dared to scold him for a stinky fart. If it was usual, he might have to find the other party's theory well, but now there is only a burst of surprise left in his mind. The universe he is in may not be the only universe. Number 1999, does that mean that there were 1998 universes before? And countless universes after that? And it looks like there are other Tony Starks there. In the now fashionable parlance, it is an isotope of a parallel universe. That is, in this world, there really are parallel universes, and there is a universe beyond the so-called fourth wall. This Luo Chen really knows something. There is also this little Robert Downey. It is not difficult to guess from Luo Chen's tone that this is likely to be his own actor in the universe beyond the fourth wall. When I thought that I was just a story written by someone else, and even my own appearance depended on the appearance of the actor, I suddenly became irritable. Jarvis, what do you think? Tony Stark asked. Sir, it seems that this matter is very complicated. From the words, it seems that several conclusions can be drawn. The first is that there is a protagonist in this world. But sir, you may not be the only protagonist. and another protagonist may be the one named Peter Parker, and Gwen Stacy should be another heroine matched by the story. Jarvis said analytically. Tony Stark nodded. This is also consistent with his analysis. Although he is a little unhappy, he is not the only male protagonist. There are other protagonists, but good villains are also part of the protagonists. The second is that the universe we are in may be a comprehensive universe connected by multiple stories, and it seems that there has been a similar concept in previous movies, called film and television universes. In these universes, there may be different protagonists, but they live in this sky at the same time. Third, this comprehensive universe seems to be unexpected by this Luo Chen, and the 1999 universe he knows is not exactly the same. In the 1999 universe he knows, the protagonist named Peter Parker should still be just a child, but the heroine in it has grown up, which should be beyond the framework of the story. So I think, as we guessed before, the so-called story world may not be completely determined by the author outside the fourth wall. It is even possible that what happened on our side influenced the authors outside the fourth wall to create stories like that. Therefore, we may be able to refer to the story in Luo Chen's mouth, but we can't fully trust this information, because maybe this world is not exactly the same as Luo Chen's memory. Jarvis's mechanized voice came. That's right. Tony Stark nodded and said. But I can't completely disbelieve it. There should be some deviations, but I feel very uncomfortable when I think that my appearance is decided by others, those actors. Why compare with me? Tony Stark was born a wealthy family in the lighthouse country, born rich, and the stars of the entertainment industry seem to him to be just a group of dramas and playthings, but now his fate and appearance are decided by an actor, and his heart is naturally very unhappy. And, Tony Stark of those other universes. Tony Stark muttered. Judging from the content of Luo Chen's diary, there is only one Tony Stark in this world, and there is even a parallel universe that looks completely different from him. In other words, he may just be Tony Stark in the 1999 universe, or even the 1999 universe, or maybe just another similar Tony Stark in a parallel universe. Otherwise, there will be no characters that do not match Luo Chen's memory. Thinking of this, he was still a little unhappy in his heart. However, there are isotopes of other parallel universes, which seems to confirm a little more. He is indeed the protagonist. Can't the protagonist have this treatment? But before Tony Stark could think more, another paragraph appeared on the blank page of the diary. At this point in time, Gwen Stacy is so big. Should the Spider-Man in this universe be the extraordinary Spider-Man, not the Dutch brother Spider-Man? In that case, the father-son relationship between Peter Parker and Tony Stark can be cut here, and Tony Stark will not have the opportunity to gradually understand his irascible old father by educating Peter Parker. But this is also good. The provincial Dutch brother Spider-Man can't pick up the mantle of Iron Man's heir, causing a lot of things. Even Aunt May was killed by him. But in this way, Gwen may die in Peter Parker's arms. If it is the version of the extraordinary Spider-Man, I don't know how many people cried at the beginning, especially in the same frame of the three spiders. He saved the Dutch brother Spider-Man's MJ, which can be regarded as barely making up for some regrets. Another piece of huge information. Tony Stark only felt a little pain in his brain case, just digested that he had different isotopes in different parallel universes, and now he has to accept that in different parallel universes there seem to be different Spider-Man. What the Amazing Spider-Man, what Dutch brother Spider-Man, seems to be two different versions of Spider-Man, and Gwen Stacy's official match should be the Amazing Spider-Man, and the Dutch brother Spider-Man's official match is the girl named MJ. At this time, many things were straightened out. It turned out to be like this. No wonder Luo Chen was so shocked. And it seems that the extraordinary Spider-Man is not ordinary miserable, will watch his woman die in his arms, miserable. If he changed him, if he saw Pepper dying in his arms, I was afraid that he would immediately run away. And that Dutch brother Spider-Man, what the hell is this name, Dutch brother? What the heck? Is it a nickname? It is also impossible for him to pay special attention to this Dutch brother Spider-Man, because according to Luo Chen's words, these two will almost become a father-son relationship, and he will also slowly understand the painstaking efforts of the old man to educate him from the process of educating the Dutch brother Spider-Man. Is this possible? He now remembered the old man at the beginning. Still only with a belt to pump him, strict discipline. It seems that there was also a stage of pleasing to him in Yan, but it was also a long, long time ago, when he seemed to be young, but the memory was already very vague. Not to mention the memory of the old man who had disciplined him in Yan Yushi at the beginning. Even the old man who disciplined him harshly afterwards was very vague, because many years had passed since the sudden death of the old man in his family. The car accident took his parents and left him with no chance to prove to his dad how good he was and how good he was, and he lived up to his expectations. Is it possible for such a self to understand the old man back then? Father-son relationship. Tony Stark muttered. Sir, it seems that this Dutch brother Spider-Man does not seem to be very reliable. According to Luo Chen's words, it seems that this Dutch brother Spider-Man cannot inherit your mantle, and then caused a lot of trouble. Not a great option. Jarvis said in time. Inherit the mantle? Why should I pass on the mantle, unless I die? Tony Stark suddenly realized something was wrong. He is only in his 30s now, just the age of a man. It can be said that he is full of spirit, from being proud of a teenager to a proud middle-aged age. Life has gone smoothly to a time when there are almost no troubles. With the life expectancy of the rich people in the current lighthouse country, it is basically not a big problem for him to live to be 100 years old, and there are still 60 or 70 years to go inside and out. How can he be so anxious to find an heir to the mantle? Unless something happened to him and he died. That is, in the future, he himself may die. I'm the male protagonist, how can I die? Tony Stark was suddenly a little shocked and a little speechless. Sir, in general, the male protagonist is indeed not dead, unless it is to launch a new generation of male protagonists, such as this Dutch brother Spider-Man, from the logic of the script, can smoothly transition to the next male protagonist, which is possible. Jarvis said. Hearing this, Tony Stark only felt that there was a hand that strangled his fate, if his death was for what kind of righteousness, but if it was just to connect the situation of the next male protagonist, then this situation made him feel very painful. His fate is at the mercy of others. Such a thing has not happened to him for a long time, especially he has always thought that he is in control of his own destiny, and now even the fate he thinks he controls is actually secretly controlled by others, and the anger in his heart is beyond doubt. He was still triumphant, feeling that he was one of the masters of this country, and that he was just a tool man. Tony Stark forcibly calmed down the anger in his heart, because he knew that anger at this time would not solve anything, and Luo Chen's arrival seemed to give him the opportunity to break the game. At least it would not be like the fate he should have. Sir, there is another key point here. 3 spiders in the same frame, literally analyzed, that is, this may be 3 Spider-Man appearing in a time and space at the same time. The so-called extraordinary Spider-Man saved the Dutch brother Spider-Man's girlfriend MJ can also prove this logic. Jarvis went on to explain. If according to Luo Chen's previous words, it is likely that there are different parallel universes in this world, Spider-Man alone, there may be at least 3, the so-called 3 spiders in the same frame, refers to the 3 Spider-Men appearing at the same time. One of them is the Dutch brother Spider-Man, the other is the extraordinary Spider-Man, the last one is still unknown who it is, but if you consider that this Spider-Man is not some kind of Superman that can be mass-produced. You mean, similar to the super soldier serum, the kind of serum that the old man said back then? Tony Stark asked. He immediately understood what Jarvis meant. There are so many Spider-Man, there are only 2 explanations, either the isotopes in different parallel universes, for example, Tony Stark also has different isotopes in different universes. There is also the fact that this Spider-Man is a kind of superhuman mass-produced, although he does not know what Spider-Man means, but from the name, it is likely to be related to the ability of some kind of spider. With his social class and his own tutoring origin, he naturally knows a lot more than ordinary people, such as the existence of super soldier serum. In the lighthouse country, the American Team Rogers is also a famous big man, and there are countless film and television dramas, anime, comics, novels, and novels adapted over the years. However, there is not much mention of how Rogers of the American team has this superhuman physique and ability, and even some stories are made up, saying that he received help from aliens, or received guidance from God and so on. But only a few upper level, such as Tony Stark, who personally participated in the production of super soldier serum, knew that the real reason for Rogers of the American team to obtain a superhuman physique was that super soldier serum. It was originally intended to be mass-produced and used to popularize among soldiers, just by looking at the name. Super soldier serum. And multiple Spider-Man in the same frame, that is, it may be like this, some kind of mass-produced superhero technology. But soon he realized something was wrong and reacted immediately. This can't be a technology similar to the super soldier serum, because they are all called Peter Parker, unless the effect of this Spider-Man serum is limited to the person named Peter Parker, otherwise it should not be. Tony Stark reacted immediately and discovered the loophole in this logic. Yes, sir. So according to the data, the probability that these Spider-Man Peter Parker are isotopes in different parallel universes is 99.9%. Jarvis said calmly analytically. This also shows that at some point in the future, the multiverse, that is, the door containing multiple parallel worlds may open, superheroes of different worlds may come to each other's worlds, and there will be a situation of 3 spiders in the same frame, and then there may also be gentlemen in different parallel universes. Tony Stark thought about it and was right. Since there may be multiple Spider-Men appearing at the same time, it is not impossible for multiple Tony Stark to appear at the same time. How will he face the isotopes in his multiverse? Is it to tear each other apart when they meet? Or do you have to scare each other when you meet? Or do you work together against unknown dangers? If I analyze it this way, if I am the protagonist, then what about my superpowers? Tony Stark thought. Could it be that when he was kidnapped, he was rescued by a worldly master, and then he taught some Eastern mysterious Qigong, or Western magic? The more Tony Stark thinks about it, the more likely it is. Why is this world dangerous? It is likely that there are so-called superheroes, such as that Spider-Man. And he, an ordinary person, at least so far is still an ordinary person. If you want to become the protagonist, or one of the protagonists, at least you must have some abilities beyond ordinary people. Is it possible to do that? What kind of Qigong and what kind of magic? If it had been a day ago, he would not have believed in the existence of such an obviously unscientific thing at all. But today there are too many unscientific things, and their 3 views have been constantly shattered, and they have been re-established, and magic really exists. After a series of bombardment with large amounts of information, he found that he was probably able to accept these mysterious things. A fart, who can accept things other than the 3 views so easily? Sir, what you are describing is very much like the plot of some third-rate novel. Jarvis said in a timely manner. But can you say that the world we live in is not the world of some third-rate story? Tony Stark asked the other way around. Since it is in the story world, isn't it normal for what kind of plot appears? This kind of adventure seems reasonable, doesn't it? But Jarvis, record the name Peter Parker, check it, it may be this Spider-Man's Peter Parker list, to be included in the list of key concerns, set up a file, named Spider-Man Peter Parker. Tony Stark said calmly, and after a series of bombardment of information, his brain calmed down again. Yes, sir. Jarvis's mechanized voice said. But at this time, there was a change in the diary, and Tony Stark saw another text appear in the diary out of thin air, but now he is much calmer. No, there is another possibility. The problem may not be the 1999 universe, not Peter Parker. The problem may be Gwen herself. I almost forgot, in some universes, Spider-Man is not Peter Parker, but Gwen. If the Spider-Man in this universe is really Gwen, then isn't Gwen Spider-Woman? It was not Gwen who was unlucky, but Peter Parker. At that time, Peter Parker may become Dr. Lizard and finally be killed by Gwen, which is too tragic. Gwen and Peter Parker are destined to die one. The screenwriter is really not a good person. In order to make Gwen a Spider-Woman, Peter Parker must die. However, Spider-Woman also has several versions, but I don't know which Spider-Woman this Gwen is. Another large piece of explosive text with a huge amount of information appeared in front of Tony Stark. He has just accepted that Peter Parker may become Spider-Man in multiple universes, and also accepts the existence of parallel universes, multiverses. Except that there may be a lot of existence called Spider-Man. Now another version of Spider-Man has emerged. No, to be precise, it should be said that it is Spider-Woman, Gwen. And Spider-Man Peter Parker may not exist with Spider-Woman in the same time and space. Judging from Luo Chen's words, there is more than one universe where Gwen has become Spider-Woman alone, so if you calculate it, there are many parallel universes that are vaguely revealed now. His own universe, possibly himself and Dutch brother Spider-Man are the same father and son universe, the universe of the extraordinary Spider-Man, and another Spider-Man universe. Gwen is several parallel universes of Spider-Woman. Right now, there are enough of these parallel universes. He suddenly felt a little brain pain. Why did he suddenly start dealing with the multiverse? But now, he doesn't even know who will kidnap him. Sure enough, the more ignorant, the happier he is, the more he knows, the more his brain case hurts. But what I know is only a few words. There is no way to know the specific full picture. I don't know the whole picture, and I don't even dare to comment. Once he had the idea of going to this Luo Chen to understand the situation, he would immediately have a severe headache, making him dare not approach at all. Thinking of this, Tony Stark could only put down his thoughts to find Luo Chen first, but said, "Jarvis, then establish a file. The name of the file is Spider-Woman, the key monitoring object, Gwen's Daisy, find her out first." "Yes, sir." Jarvis spoke. "The search results are out, sir. According to the information given in the diary, Spider-Woman Gwen's Daisy should be the person below," Jarvis said, projecting a picture of a young girl in front of Tony Stark. It was none other than Gwen Stacy. Gwen Stacy, 16 years old, her father is the chief of the New York Police Department, and according to all the information available online, there are no other signs that she can become Spider-Woman. Jarvis spoke. In addition, all possible Peter Parker results have been searched, and only one Peter Parker who is currently only 7 years old and lives in Queens matches the Peter Parker mentioned in Rockin's diary, and he also has an aunt named May and an uncle named Ben Parker. Peter Parker is so small, it means that it is not the extraordinary Spider-Man, or other versions of Spider-Man. It is likely to be the Dutch brother Spider-Man who is the same father and son as I said in Luo Chen's notebook. This Dutch brother should not be the actor of this Spider-Man in the Fourth Wall universe, Tony Stark said. But it seems that Gwen did not appear as a heroine. They are a little older, almost 10 years old, which shows that this Gwen Stacy is likely to become Spider-Woman, a Spider-Man, a Spider-Woman. I don't know if this Luo Chen has thought of this. Judging from the diary recorded in Luo Chen's diary, he probably didn't think of this. Jarvis explained. Maybe in the story he knows, there is no version of Spider-Man and Spider-Woman at the same time, or Peter Parker dies and Gwen becomes Spider-Woman, or Gwen dies, Peter Parker becomes Spider-Man. Finally, there is something that he doesn't even know about a traverser. Tony Stark thought of this, and suddenly felt much more comfortable. This Luo Chen has been in his sight since he appeared. He looks like a bamboo in his chest, especially judging that he was kidnapped. It is simply a stable look, and even wants to use his kidnapping to make a lot of money. It's just abominable. Tony Stark couldn't punish him yet, and it was difficult to even get close, so he could only watch from afar, and at the same time, in the face of this all-knowing and all-powerful person, he also had a little fear in his heart. Such a completely uncontrollable person makes him feel uncomfortable from the bottom of his heart. Continue to monitor, but still have to divide a part of the computing power to calculate who might kidnap me, Tony Stark said. He now completely believes that he will be kidnapped in the future, but he doesn't know who it is, so he simply lets Jarvis hack into various networks, especially those that compete with him. If anyone wants to eliminate themselves quickly, then these enemies are the same. He has offended too many people in his life, because of his broken mouth, and he himself has a little bit in his heart, although he feels that he is just telling the truth, but how annoying he is, he still knows how much he still knows in his heart. Just a broken mouth should not make people feel the urge to kidnap him, or even kill him, and most likely other competitors who are also capitalists. Without Tony Stark, how much more money would they make? Especially the idiot Justin Hammer, whose Hammer Industrial Group was suppressed by its own Stark Industries Group and can only produce some ordinary, not too profitable weapons, and recently heard that a funny missile called What Ex-Wife has been developed, which is simply ridiculous. You have to start with these idiot opponents. These people are far worse than themselves in terms of intelligence, but in terms of intrigue, he does not dare to underestimate these people at all. Damn, if this Luo Chen revealed in his diary who kidnapped me, then it would be fine. I will check everywhere now. Tony Stark cursed secretly. Now because of Luo Chen's advanced spoilers, let him know that he will be kidnapped, so Tony Stark simply cancelled all external activities for his own safety, originally going to Afghanistan to sell a weapon to the military, and now he doesn't want to go. Anyway, the quality of the weapon is here. He dares to say that this is the most powerful missile in the world so far. He does not believe that the military is not moved. Anyway, just send a salesperson at will. Originally, there was no reason for the chairman of the company to personally go to Afghanistan to sell weapons, but his uncle Obadiah kept telling him that he had been idle for too long recently, and the board of directors was very dissatisfied with him, so he let him go through the motions, so that the old guys on the board had nothing to say. Otherwise, he would not have been able to go to the scene to sell, and it was not that there were no salesmen, nor was there no company top management to be responsible. The old guys in those companies know what, if they don't work diligently for a few months every year, how can the company have such good profits, so that their dividends are rising every year? His wanderers are idle, eating and drinking everywhere, for better work, and even this is not understood. These old guys are really funny. The flowers bloomed at each end, and Luo Chen didn't know that Tony Stark was secretly complaining about his unreliability, and wouldn't say who kidnapped him. For him, it's just a diary. Anyway, write casually, and complain as much as you want. Who stipulates that writing a diary has to be a spoiler? Anyway, as long as he is happy, he can write anything in the diary, and no one else will see it. And this diary is also very convenient to write. You don't have to do it yourself, and as soon as you think about it, it will appear in the diary. At this time, he had just finished teaching Gwen Stacy and enjoyed Gwen Stacy's adoring eyes. He still took his leave, and for these characters of the main plot, he still wanted to have less contact. Especially when you don't have any self-preservation ability, less contact will reduce the possibility of death. Unbeknownst to him, however, that shortly after he left, there was an extra diary on Gwen Stacy's desk. Gwen Stacy returned to the house after sending Luo Chen and saw this diary. This is Teacher Luo's diary. Gwen Stacy noticed Luo Chen's name in the diary. Originally she didn't want to see it, but who knows, the ghost made a godsend and turned it over. Opening lightning strike. When she opened the diary, what she saw directly gave her an opening lightning strike. June 6th, it's sunny today, waiting for the first day of Tony Stark's kidnapping. June 7th, it's cloudy today, waiting for the day after Tony Stark is kidnapped. June 7th, light rain, waiting for the third day of Tony Stark's kidnapping. Luo Chen, you can't continue to fall, you have to fight hard. Struggle a hair, wait for Tony Stark to be kidnapped, take advantage of the low to buy a wave of stocks, wait for him to switch to new energy and then throw it out. A lifetime of expenses will be earned. Who is still working hard? She didn't expect that what she saw at the beginning was that her own teacher Luo wrote in her diary that she was waiting for Tony Stark to be kidnapped, and it seemed that she was still so determined. Obviously, if it is not crazy, there must be a special reason for it. However, she then saw what Luo Chen wrote later. This Gwen is so beautiful, she is indeed a goddess in the hearts of countless people in her previous life. If there is a chance, maybe it can also prevent her tragedy. Suddenly, Gwen Chao's face turned red, and then he thought, Teacher Luo also thinks I look good. Thinking of Luo Chen's knife-like handsome face, as well as the unparalleled ability of the super student, Gwen couldn't help but start thumping his heart. Her age is exactly the age of the young Mui, and Luo Chen is completely different from the boys in school who can only be funny all day, and she is the most attractive to a girl like her. Immediately after Gwen looked down, he saw that he might be the official named Peter Parker mentioned in the diary, and he suddenly felt bad. Spider-Man. The one called Peter Parker. Gwen Stacy saw something from Luo Chen's record later, this future named Peter Parker will become Spider-Man. And there is also a multiverse in this world, and there are multiple parallel universes in this multiverse, and there is more than one Peter Parker and one Spider-Man in it. What the amazing Spider-Man, what Dutch brother Spider-Man. There is no doubt that like Tony Stark, she also feels that her three views are almost about to be blown up. Parallel universes, multiverses and whatnot, itself is one of the more popular directions in physics now. Now the existence of parallel universes has almost been confirmed through Luo Chen's diary. However, this is not the most outrageous. The most outrageous thing is that in addition to these parallel universes, the multiverse, there is a universe beyond the fourth wall. His own fate turned out to be a script written by someone else. Will he die in the arms of that extraordinary Spider-Man Peter Parker in the future? And the fate of all this turned out to be just the result of a certain screenwriter's writing. Thinking of this, Gwen suddenly wanted to hit someone. Why? For this plot to sacrifice himself. What is the reason? Immediately, Gwen saw Luo Chen complaining about the Spider-Woman, and what she immediately thought of in her mind was that she had become a monster with a spider body, and she suddenly shuddered, and she only felt extremely disgusting. In the pen of this screenwriter, he and Peter Parker have almost no way to survive well, or they become Spider-Woman and Peter Parker dies. Either Peter Parker turns into Spider-Man and dies himself. All in all, nothing ends well. I'm just a plot character. Gwen thought a little distractedly. How could it be? She thought about it carefully. She obviously had all the memories from childhood to adulthood. There were joys, there were pains, almost everything, and she was almost certain that she was an independent individual with the ability to think independently. The reason why it is almost, not completely, is because what Luo Chen wrote in his diary is too determined, and seems to be very sure that this is a world of stories written by others. Thinking of this, she suddenly became a little irritable. And looking at this statement, it seems that even his own role has different isotopes in different parallel space-times. No, this is Mr. Luo's prank. Gwen couldn't help but think that all this looked, how it looked like some kind of prank by Luo Chen. What crossing, what rebirth, what story world, what Spider-Man, what Spider-Woman, all written at a glance, there is a look, just like the real thing. What? Why did Teacher Luo call me the unlucky heroine? I'm not unlucky. Gwen couldn't help but speak. But before she could continue to complain, she found that under the diary, words continued to appear. Today I saw one of the dream wives of countless people, Marvel's best girlfriend. The mood is really great, but I don't know how she and Ao Mei are compared. I feel that it should not be as big as Ao Mei. Seeing this, Gwen couldn't help but blush slightly, but then looked down with some disbelief. Who is that sister? How can he not be as big as her? Teacher Luo is really too much. Gwen looked at his chest. It was not small, but he was still evaluated by Luo Chen as not as big as Ao Mei, but it can be imagined that Ao Mei must be very big in Luo Chen's heart. I can still grow. However, she immediately thought that she was called Marvel's best girlfriend by Luo Chen, one of the dream wives in countless hearts of everyone, and suddenly felt better again. This evaluation is not low. I was a little shy, but a little proud. But Mr. Luo is serious on the surface. I didn't expect to be such a person in private. Gwen snorted twice and said. Luo Chen didn't know that his diary had been copied and fell into Gwen's hands, and his little careful thinking was all seen by writing the diary. Seeing the heroine Gwen today, Luo Chen thought that he had covered up very well. At least he did not expose his true thoughts, and with his current ability, it may be the safest to be far away from these plot characters. Although the lighthouse country itself is not safe, although New York itself is a chaotic metropolis, it has nothing to do with security. But under normal circumstances, as long as you stay away from these characters who will bring the plot, you can stay away from the real danger. And tomorrow is his first 7 days of check-in. According to the rules of the system, he can start the first draw, and he does not know what he will be able to draw tomorrow. Although it was a surprise to meet Gwen today, there are too many well-known heroines in Marvel, and Gwen is just one of them, and even Spider-Man is not just this one girlfriend. After all, every superhero has been serialized for decades, and it will probably break 100 years for a long time, and who hasn't had a few confidants in such a long time. But if I chase Gwen down, it will also prevent the tragedy between her and Peter Parker from happening. It will also save people's lives and win the 7th level floating slaughter. Seeing a paragraph reprinted in the diary, Gwen suddenly felt that his little face was red. Teacher Luo wants to chase me. This is not impossible, especially in the lighthouse country. Girls themselves are very precocious, and there are also boyfriends at the age of 15 or 16. Not to mention such a handsome teacher. Luo Chen returned to the rented house, because the original apartment had been sold and exchanged for money. Only after Tony Stark was kidnapped, he could go to the bottom. He didn't know that because of this sudden diary, Gwen and Tony Stark could be said to have stayed up all night. After a night without words, after waking up early, Luo Chen couldn't wait to start writing today's diary. June 11th, a sunny day, another dangerous day in New York. Outside is the bustling New York City area, but no one can imagine how dangerous it will be here in the future, since Tony Stark returned from Afghanistan, and after announcing himself as Iron Man, all kinds of originally hidden super criminals, superheroes, like a blowout. The city is too dangerous, I want to go back to the countryside. Just as Luo Chen began to write his diary, in Tony Stark's mansion in New York, Jarvis directly called Tony Stark. "Sir, that diary has been updated." "What? Why is the update diary in the morning? How can a serious person write a diary in the morning? Is this person sick?" Tony Stark couldn't help but complain with a poisonous tongue. He studied the diary left by Luo Chen last night, and he really didn't see anything from it. Except for the liking for Gwen expressed later, and the big-breasted girl named Omei, there is basically nothing. In other words, it has been analyzed in the morning, and it is only in the middle of the night that I fall asleep. As a result, it didn't take long to fall asleep before he was called up to read a brand new diary. Generally, the diary is to record what happened that day, so it is usually written before going to bed, but Luo Chen is different. Get up early in the morning to write a diary. Isn't this sick? Designated sick. Tony Stark felt like he was being tortured violently. He yawned and came to the living room. His diary spread out, and another paragraph came out of it. When he saw this paragraph, Tony Stark's pupils contracted slightly. "Don't talk about the nonsense before." Luo Chen complained that New York is dangerous, not a day or two, very normal. But as mentioned later, after Tony Stark returned from Afghanistan, he announced that he had become Iron Man, and all kinds of hidden super criminals and superheroes emerged like a blowout. Super criminals, superheroes. Tony Stark can see from the description of these two words that this is obviously not an ordinary criminal, nor an ordinary hero. At least it should be similar to the superhero Captain America in World War II. Or rather, the world, since the word superhero has been used to describe Captain America. Because at least on the surface, there is no second such superhero. But from Luo Chen's words, it can be judged that in the future, there will be more and more such superheroes and supercriminals, and the number will be so large that the whole of New York will become very dangerous. It also gave him a sense of urgency. Iron Man. Tony Stark could naturally see that this word should describe himself, similar to the characters such as Spider-Man and Spider-Woman who appeared before. "Sure enough," I said, "I should be a protagonist," Tony Stark said proudly. Before he firmly believed that with his own intelligence, he should be a protagonist, otherwise, Luo Chen's notebook would not mention himself 3 times or twice. But now it is only now confirmed for the first time from Luo Chen's notebook that he is indeed the protagonist. Iron Man, what kind of man is it, with the ability to control steel? Tony Stark thought for a long time, and from a literal understanding, it seemed that this was the only thing. This is not in line with his scientific ideas, but thinking about it, there seems to be no other way. It's better to be capable than not to be capable. At least from Luo Chen's words, it can be judged that the future of New York is very dangerous. Those superheroes, and not to mention, just those super criminals, is not something that ordinary people can deal with. For example, some time ago, the 2 monsters that went on a killing spree in New York, a green monster and a black monster with long spines, could only vaguely see the human form, and only 2 people had a devastating impact on the entire block. That thing, Tony Stark has heard about it, and even through Jarvis hacked into the network of some military units, obtained some information. It can be said that those two monsters are very, very terrifying. Judging from the video data, these two monsters are much taller than ordinary people, and if they are only taller, it is nothing, but their skin is rough and thick to the point that ordinary bullets cannot penetrate. And not only bullets, but even ordinary shells hitting them, do not pose any threat at all. And the green big man is even more powerful. Not only is it invulnerable, the shell is difficult to hurt. According to the analysis of video data, his strength, speed, endurance will continue to rise with the rise of anger. There is no limit in sight yet. At least in the limited information, there is no limit in sight. Because although Jarvis was able to hack into the military's network, in fact, the more secretive network was directly physically disconnected, and there was no way to directly invade, which is why Tony Stark had a very limited understanding of that matter. He only knew that the birth of that monster was probably directly related to the military. Probably some kind of military experiment. In the country of lighthouses, all kinds of biochemical experiments, human experiments, are not uncommon at all. That is, the Stark Group does not have biochemical related projects, otherwise, this is inevitable. As a capitalist, he is no stranger to this. It's just that Tony Stark still has some bottom lines in his heart. He's just a playboy, not a demon who destroys humanity. That is, in the future, how many super criminals will be like that green giant and black monster? Tony Stark only felt a pain in his brain, and if that was the case, then New York was really not very safe. Isn't it dangerous to be in New York yourself? But what exactly is this Iron Man's abilities? How do I get this ability? Is it an innate awakening? Or the day after tomorrow? He has no clue about this, so he can't let him go directly to Afghanistan once. And from Luo Chen's words, he could see that Luo Chen said before that he would be kidnapped. I am afraid that it has a lot to do with this matter. Afghanistan. Coincidentally, no, he did have a trip to Afghanistan recently. That is, he was kidnapped, most likely in Afghanistan. But according to the itinerary planning of Afghanistan, there are military personnel to protect the whole process, and it should not be overturned. But the result is that he really overturned and was kidnapped, although I don't know how he came back and how he became Iron Man, but this will definitely not be a wonderful experience. He now wanted to find Luo Chen thoroughly and ask him what he had experienced in Afghanistan and how he had obtained this ability to control steel. Sir, if you look at the logic that our world is a story world, this is very possible. Jarvis said. Judging from Hollywood's script creation habits, it may indeed be such a thing. The protagonist was originally unworldly, but then after a blow, he slowly matured, gained the ability to surpass ordinary people, and then defeated the last strong enemy. Hollywood scripts. Tony Stark had a headache thinking that this matter might be the same as a Hollywood script. Judging from the situation revealed in Luo Chen's diary, the world outside the fourth wall is likely to be very similar to our world, and their screenwriters used their original world as a reference point to create this world called Marvel, in which superheroes, what heroes, are likely to be the protagonists. Jarvis spoke. Jarvis, your analysis makes sense. Tony Stark nodded. But this is good, at least it shows that our screenwriter will not be some non-human monster. Tony Stark thought about it. The fact that he was created already made him feel very humiliated, and if the creation of his existence was still a group of non-human monsters, he would be even more uncomfortable. Who can accept that their creator is a non-human monster? At least it must have a human shape. It is difficult for humans to imagine things that do not exist at all, and from the point of view that our world has complete operating rules, it should exist in an identical world outside the fourth wall. Jarvis said. The famous and surnamed superheroes that appear now are Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, and me, Iron Man, so this Marvel is likely to be a comprehensive world, which is also in line with what was written in Luo Chen's diary before. Tony Stark said. A superhero is an independent worldview, and then different superheroes live in the same world, and can be linked when necessary. Is this logic? Tony Stark is such a smart person, through a few clues, he can guess a lot of things. After all, I have seen a lot of Hollywood movies, and I am not unfamiliar with the concept of the movie universe, and I immediately figured out why although he is the protagonist, there are other protagonists, even other heroines. It turns out that there are such and such reasons for this. That is to say, everyone has their own storyline, including Peter Parker, who may have a father-son relationship with him in Luo Chen's words, and should also have his own storyline. And the linkage of two superheroes is likely to drive the box office, or subscription, or sales and other things. The maximum is the movie box office. Because Luo Chen said that he is very similar to the one named Robert Downey Jr., that is, his own actor, it is more likely to be a movie. Of course, there may also be some comic version, novel version. After all, there are so many multiverses. He may just be the Tony Stark called the 1999 universe. As more and more information was obtained, Tony Stark also slowly outlined some settings for his world by the screenwriters outside the fourth wall, and he also counted in his heart. No wonder Luo Chen said that New York is very dangerous, since there are superheroes. Then from the perspective of drama, there must also be super criminals, otherwise, wouldn't it be very boring? From this point of view, these stories should be the story of superheroes fighting super criminals. Hey, with a little more money, you can make a special effects blockbuster. Tony Stark sneered. He understands better. Whether he is kidnapped, transformed into new energy, or Gwen will die as the girlfriend of Spider-Man Peter Parker, or Peter Parker will die as a lizardman in the arms of Spider-Woman Gwen, it should be to increase the drama of these stories so that it is more popular. Yes, if you judge from the simple story, in order for your protagonist to achieve the purpose of growth, then it is likely to arrange other disasters and twists and turns to promote your growth, and in the process, it may hurt your loved ones, your lovers. Jarvis said with a rational and objective analysis. Damn it. Tony Stark suddenly realized that it was not good. If you just torture him, he with the aura of the protagonist will be fine, but if you look at it from another angle, it is likely that his relatives and friends around him will have an accident to achieve the purpose of promoting his growth. The hearts of these screenwriters are really dirty. In the past, when Tony Stark watched these Hollywood blockbusters, he would not feel the heart of these screenwriters. After all, everyone knows that it is only fiction, and who will be angry about the fate of fictional characters. But now after the turn of the person who was fiddled with fate, everything is different. When Jarvis reminded him that someone around him might be in trouble because of him, his heart went into arrest, as if someone had grabbed his own heart. With Tony Stark's unstinting personality, it can be said that there are many people who care, but there is actually only one person who cares about what can never be lost, that is, Pepper. Justice, remember to remind me to strengthen Pepper's security. Tony Stark instructed. He was afraid that if he forgot for a while, he would cause great regret, so he simply asked Jarvis to remind himself. How many supercriminals, superheroes will appear in New York to use the blowout? Tony Stark said. So I was the beginning of it all. If superheroes and supercriminals will blow out, it should not be less, and now there should probably be some traces, otherwise do you have to wait for the same as that Peter Parker? I don't know what happened in the future, at what point in time, suddenly became Spider-Man Peter Parker. Jarvis, build a file name, anecdote, collect information on the internet, if necessary, hack into the military and government networks, see if there are some strange people and strange things, all sorted out. These super criminals are superheroes, I must have some mastery. Tony Stark immediately instructed. Yes, sir, the file has been established. Jarvis said directly. However, before Tony Stark could continue, he saw another paragraph appear in the diary. Speaking of this, the first time I saw Tony Stark's catfish face mark armor, I felt a little unaccustomed to it, but I didn't expect that after so many years, dozens of Mark series armor actually looked good. It's a pity that I can't see the classic picture of Tony Stark striking iron in an Afghan cave with my own eyes. That's Tony Stark's God opening, save Marvel with his own strength, 6 flying. Catfish face mark armor. These words suddenly hit Tony Stark like a bolt of lightning, making him suddenly remember something, and he finally understood why he was called Iron Man. Originally, he understood it literally. For example, Spider-Man may become a spider. For example, Iron Man may be the ability to control steel. Logically analyzed, it should be like this. Who would have thought that it turned out to be a warframe? Yes, he did have the idea of making a warframe. But at that time, it could only be regarded as some vague ideas. In fact, this type of armor itself is not a very new concept. All the world's major powers have designed individual armor, but in general, the performance is very average. It can only be regarded as an auxiliary tool for individual soldiers, and it cannot reach the level of the kind of armor he imagined. So he is not without ideas about warframes. After all, he is an arms manufacturer, and individual armor is also one of the arms research directions of the next generation, but he has not really started to study, just a little bit of the East. Because with the current technology, even if it really overcomes various difficulties, the cost is too high, and it is not liked by the military. But this is indeed an excellent way out. If from the perspective of military procurement, those war frames are somewhat impractical, the cost is too high, at most form some experimental squads. But if it is used for itself, then everything is completely different. Even if the cost of a warframe can be increased to tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, it is naturally not a drop in the bucket for him, but it is definitely an affordable price. Don't forget, he is one of the richest people in the whole world, and nothing else, that is, more money. At this moment, the train of thought opened, and many things that I couldn't understand originally figured out why my nickname would teach Iron Man. In fact, it is just an Iron Man. He is indeed just an ordinary person, and even among ordinary people, he cannot be regarded as strong. It can only be said that he has the habit of maintaining fitness every day. But he can put an iron can on himself, and with the help of these iron cans, everything is completely different. With the technology he had at his disposal, it was completely feasible, but he didn't have that need before. And it is not difficult to judge from Luo Chen's words that he will be caught in the cave of Afghanistan in the future, and little by little he has struck the armor with manual iron, and even that picture, in Luo Chen's mouth, has become a picture of sealing gods. Fengsheng. I didn't expect this kid to have a bit of insight. Tony Stark was also very satisfied with Luo Chen's praise. Tony Stark is so invincible, it's just so awesome, there's no problem. After all, he is the protagonist of this world. What does the protagonist understand? Understand what the gold content of the protagonist is. Think about it this way, the screenwriter who created his own screenplay outside the fourth wall is also a bit of an eye, knowing that Tony Stark portrayed it so perfectly. Sir, this diary says that you once saved Marvel single-handedly. Judging from the current judgment, this sentence may have two meanings. The first is the name of the general name of the multiverse we are in. He has mentioned this Marvel more than once. The last time related to this Marvel was Miss Gwen, saying that he was Marvel's best girlfriend. Jarvis said analytically. So this Marvel may be the general term for the multiverse we are in, or the story that is written, and of course it may be the general term for a whole series of stories outside the fourth wall. Yes. Tony Stark nodded and said. So this saved Marvel. Maybe I saved this universe, or maybe I saved the box office of this Marvel series of movies outside the fourth wall. Yes, your analysis is very correct. If this world is a story world, then the popularity of this story directly determines the survival of this world, and you should be in the movie universe. Most likely your story saved this series of stories. Jarvis spoke slowly about the deduction and analysis in his database. Good, good. Tony Stark had a somewhat smug look on his face, although he was probably created by the fact that he was very upset. But what a good feeling to be a savior. Although he doesn't know whether this Marvel in Luo Chen's mouth refers to this world or the story of this series. Because from the same time there are Iron Man, Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, and possibly even other superheroes, super criminals, then his world may be the platform for a series of stories. And he saved the world. Whether it was saving the world or saving the box office of the series of stories, it is enough to prove that he, Tony Stark, is the child of destiny. It seems that the Warframe will be my main breakthrough direction in the future. Tony Stark muttered, and from the contents of the diary, it seemed that he would have developed at least a few dozen Warframes in the future. It is equivalent to knowing the correct answer to an exam question in advance, and if he does not know to copy it, then he is not Tony Stark. Originally, he was able to invent it, and even strike iron in a cave in Afghanistan, and with his current conditions, there is no reason why he can't do it. Mark Warframe. A name that sounds pretty good. Tony Stark touched his chin and said, "It was decided that in the future, my armor will be called Mark Warframe." Jarvis. Build a brand new file, the name of the file, the Mark series of Warframes, and put all the scattered thoughts about the Warframe that I had recorded in this file. You are right, this world is so dangerous, it's time to increase your own security power. Tony Stark said. Of course, what he wants to increase is not ordinary security forces, but to be able to deal with that kind of green big thing, and it is basically difficult for ordinary people to threaten a top boss like him. Even if he usually looks so bohemian, it is not something that ordinary people can hurt. But speaking of which, Tony Stark suddenly remembered something and said, "What is the code name of the big green man we just talked about on the military side? It's called Hulk, right, and the one who first appeared called Abomination, wreaking havoc, and finally these two fought together, and the final result was that both of them disappeared." That's basically what Tony Stark learned about the Hulk and Abomination in the previous 2 years, and this is the news he got after sneaking into the military's network. If our world is a series of stories, will these two also be the protagonists? Tony Stark said. The one who first appeared, called Abomination, wreaked havoc, caused countless deaths and injuries, should not be a superhero, that may be a super criminal, then the green big man, Hulk, should not be a superhero representing the military. The more Tony Stark thought about it, the more likely it was that if this was an ordinary world, then it was naturally likely to be the product of a failed experiment. But if this is a world of story series, then since it is a story, it is necessary to talk about logic and explosive points, especially the model of Hollywood blockbusters. That is to say, if you think about it this way, could it be that the Hulk and Abomination are actually a pair of protagonists and villains? This also makes sense. The super criminal Abomination comes out to wreak havoc, and then the superhero Hulk comes out to clean up the pieces and defeat the bad guys. Totally reasonable. This is also in line with the urine of ordinary Hollywood blockbusters. Since inferring that the universe outside the fourth wall is likely to have huge common characteristics with his own universe, Tony Stark has concluded that they may also have Hollywood over there, so according to the urine of Hollywood filming in his own world, he can probably infer very, very many things. It seems that you can't underestimate that Hulk. Search for more relevant information on the internet, and do everything possible to know the other party's intelligence. Tony Stark instructed Jarvis. Understood, sir. Jarvis replied. It's really a troublesome world. I understand now why this Luo Chen thinks this is a dangerous world, but I'm afraid this is not the most dangerous. Tony Stark sighed. The big Hulk is already a very dangerous figure in his eyes, and once it appears, it can be said that conventional weapons will lose their use. Anyway, he can't think of any way to contain it so far. But in Luo Chen's words, there was no mention of the Hulk at all, and the people he was really afraid of were that Jiu Yi and that Kong. Jiu Yi, Kong, these two names, Tony Stark remembered deeply, but there was too little information about these two people, so little that Tony Stark could not use this as a basis. But fortunately, our world does not seem to be without a guardian, at least this Jiu Yi, and this Kong, seem to be guarding our world. Tony Stark said. Otherwise, an alien traverser like him would not be so afraid, and even afraid of attracting the attention of Jiu Yi and Kong. At present, the information about Jiu Yi and Kong is too scarce. Last night I searched the entire internet of information. There is no information about Kong, but about Jiu Yi, in the legends of some small South Asian countries, it seems to exist. I don't know if it is a coincidence or just a homophone name in the process of translation. Jarvis continued to answer. What information? Tony Stark quickly asked. Yesterday, before going to bed, he told Jarvis to pay more attention to the existence of these two people, and he had a hunch that these two people were likely to be the key to guarding the current Earth and preventing too many outrageous existences from appearing on the current Earth. In the small countries of South Asia, It seems that there were once traces of this ancient one. Jarvis said, projecting a document on the table in front of him. It was an ancient book. The ancient book was written in ancient South Asian script, but it was accompanied by English text next to it. The highlights were marked, and Jarvis continued. Judging from the few words mentioned, it seems that in the small South Asian countries of Nepal's generation today, as well as in the Tibetan region in China, there is a legend called Gui, which says that he was the guardian of the local people, who once protected the earth from the invasion of evil demons. Like some kind of local indigenous mythology, there is very little information, and there is no academic organization to conduct relevant research. After all, it is too poor there. Even the local government has little money. There is no money to fund academic organizations to conduct research on this indigenous myth. Although it may just be a character with a similar syllable, it can be regarded as a little clue. Tony Stark said. Small countries in South Asia, so help me contact the various archaeology departments of the Ivy League schools, well-known doctors and professors in the history department. I want to fund $50 million to fund their research, but I only have one request. Let them immediately organize a scientific expedition to South Asia, looking for information about this ancient one. I need to know more. Okay, sir. I'll arrange it right away. Jarvis said. Tony Stark nodded. This is the only clue at present. The power that he can use alone is too small. Jarvis's power is also limited. To be precise, on the internet, Jarvis's power can be said to be very strong. Even if it is the government, the military is difficult to escape Jarvis's invasion. But many things do not appear on the internet. For example, the information of this person named Gui is very small on the internet, and it is necessary to organize real people to find it. And in this regard, where are there scholars more professional than the history department, the archaeology department, etc.? $50 million, enough to make these usually poor professors crazy. After all, there are many people who will fund high-tech research, but there are too few who fund archaeological research and are still unpopular indigenous myths. This is the power of capital. Immediately after that, a large paragraph continued to appear in the diary. Although Tony Stark has a bad mouth and a poisonous tongue, he still has the responsibility of being a superhero. Of course, that has to be when he escaped from the death in Afghanistan once, saw the weapons he developed, originally used to protect good people, after being sold to Afghan warlords and extremist organizations, and suffered a lot, and even his friend Ethan personally died in order to buy him time to wear the armor. He realized the whole thing, from a disgusting playboy, embarked on the road to superheroes. Since then, Tony Stark's happy playboy life has come to an end, with a mission to save the world, and he will never enjoy happiness so simply again. The entire text is full of ridicule and pity for Tony Stark. Stinky boy, dare to say that I have a poisonous tongue and a smelly mouth. Tony Stark was immediately furious. This stinky boy, more than once spit on him in the diary. Obviously, he has not seen him yet, but he has already been complained about in the diary. How can I speak so viciously? I tell the truth. Tony Stark said, dissatisfied. Sir, in a general worldly sense, you are a poisonous tongue, which is very annoying. Jarvis's voice appeared at the right time. You shut up, Jarvis. Tony Stark said in annoyance. But he continued to look. The more he looked at his face, the more ugly he looked. From these words, his previous guess that he was kidnapped in Afghanistan was also confirmed, and even struck iron in an Afghan cave, representing the creation of war armor guess is also correct. But the whole thing was not as easy as the diary at the beginning. Went to Afghanistan, and then came back. The whole process was regarded as 9 deaths. Then he saw what made him angry. His weapons. Originally there should only be one customer, that is, the military of the lighthouse country. In addition to the military of the lighthouse country, the military of the other allied countries are secondary customers, and the weapons can only be sold to them with the approval of the military of the lighthouse country. But in any case, it is only the military of various countries that are eligible to buy, and other countries are not eligible to buy, let alone warlords and extremist organizations, which is definitely a blacklist on the weapons he sells. Although he is a capitalist, he believes that he still has some bottom lines, not a person without bottom lines. But now, this bottom line has been punctured, and the weapons he developed, which should have been used to protect good people, are now being used by warlords and extremist organizations to slaughter those people. This made him angry. How is it possible? How can my weapons be sold to them, and when have I approved it? Tony Stark was furious and said, "Jarvis, have I ever signed such a document?" "No, sir." Jarvis immediately replied, "Internal traitors, there must be internal traitors, and someone is making claims." Tony Stark immediately realized that if he had not inadvertently approved the sale of weapons to warlord organizations and extremist organizations in the past, there would only be one possibility, that is, there was an internal traitor in the company, and this internal traitor was in charge and sold the weapons. Something must have gone wrong. But the entire Stark Group, how many weapons are produced every day? There is a fixed number, including whether the weapons are qualified or not, whether they are destroyed. There should be records, and there are not many who can have the authority to conceal them. It can be said that only he, the chairman, and those executive directors are qualified. There is also a possibility, sir. It was resold by the military, and it is also possible. Jarvis reminded. Yes, those guys are also possible. Tony Stark immediately thought that the military of the Lighthouse country is not a good man and a woman. The Afghan war has been so long. How much military spending has been spent? Probably only they know. How much corruption they face, he thinks and knows. In the past, he himself was also a piece of the pie, and of course he made a lot of money in the huge purchase, but he also knew that these people did everything for money. This is really normal. In any case, immediately launch an investigation. First investigate the financial situation of each executive director in our company. See if there is an unknown flow of funds beyond their original income, and immediately investigate all the weapons manufacturing factories under the name of Stark Group. The entire industrial chain, including upstream raw materials, are all included in the supervision. I want to know, who dares to make a move on this issue? Tony Stark forced himself to endure the anger in his heart and ordered Jarvis to say, "Okay, sir, but does the scope of this investigation need to include Executive Director Obadi?" Jarvis asked, as is customary. Tony Stark was stunned for a moment, and he remembered that his uncle Obadi was also the executive director, and it was impossible for him to suspect Obadi. After all, this was after his parents died in a car accident. It can be said that he brought up his uncle. Not a pro-uncle, but also more like a pro-uncle. But in an instant, he thought of all kinds of news mentioned in the diary, which can be said to have changed his mind dramatically. He will be kidnapped in Afghanistan in the future, and even survive death, but why would he, as the chairman of a company, personally go to Afghanistan to test any new weapons for the military? Because his uncle Obadi forced him to go, saying that he had to let him do some work for the company. He had some doubts about Obadi in his heart. This shouldn't be possible. Tony Stark did not doubt Obadiah, nor did he doubt that Obadiah would harm him. After all, he wanted to harm him in many ways when he was young, but how much Obadiah loved money, he also knew in his heart. Or rather, there is no capitalist who does not love money, so whether he will do it, Tony Stark does not dare to guarantee. Include Uncle Obadi in the scope of investigation. Don't startle the snake. Tony Stark said. Yes, sir. Jarvis said immediately. Also, immediately hack into the military's relevant network, look up relevant information, and see if anyone from the military is reselling our Stark Group's weapons. Tony Stark said immediately. To fight against the entire military and the military-industrial complex, Tony Stark does not have this idea. Even he himself is a member of the military-industrial complex, and he can't control others, but who his own weapons are sold to. He needs to be clear in his mind, never allow someone to resell his weapons and then use his weapons to hurt others. Of course, it is impossible for him to crush the entire military, but it is only against some corrupt elements, and it can still be tried, which is his final moral bottom line. Then he continued to read, and he now somewhat understood why in the future, as written in Luo Chen's diary, he suddenly stopped making arms and switched to new energy. In Afghanistan, I was subjected to inhuman encounters, not counting the survival of death, but also saw countless local children. Local ordinary people were killed by weapons produced by their own companies. Probably there will be a shock in their minds. Not to mention that he saw it with his own eyes. Now just because he knows this matter, just by looking at the text description, there has been a huge wave in his heart. Not to mention, there was the man named Ethan, who died for him. He, Tony Stark, a playboy, thinks he is a genius, but he is not arrogant enough to think that many people are willing to die for themselves. But this Ethan did it. Even if it is only possible in the future, but he cannot sit idly by, he wants to save people. Of course, this will have to wait until his armor is finished. Jarvis, record it, and when my armor is finished, remind me to go and save this man named Ethan. Tony Stark said. He finally felt for the first time that he had glimpsed the benefits of the future from the diary, and the sad things that originally happened could be prevented in advance. The man named Ethan died trying to save him, but that was the setting in the script. He can even think that Ethan is afraid that he is a tool man, and in the screenwriter's pen, it exists to inspire his heart to become a superhero. For screenwriters, it may be a matter of writing a few more words, but in this world, there is a living person, and he cannot sit idly by. It's like that as the protagonist. He may not be much in the eyes of the screenwriter, just a created character, but he has a complete growth trajectory, a complete memory, and he is by no means a paper person. He is him, Tony Stark, a proud super rich, super philanthropist, super genius, super scientist. Okay, sir, but according to the diary, you will be kidnapped in Afghanistan, and according to the general itinerary, your trip in Afghanistan will be accompanied by a platoon of soldiers throughout the journey, and in this case there can be an accident, which shows that the local warlord armed forces are very strong. You have some adventure. Jarvis reminded anyway. Of course, I have thought of this for a long time, and I am not sure that I will not go. Tony Stark said. Now that he knew the danger, now that he knew the possible extreme situation over there, of course, he would not be so stupid and sent to death. Unless his armor is made, he is fully prepared. Then Tony Stark saw Luo Chen's words later. Since he became Iron Man, his happy life has completely ended. Carrying the mission of saving the world, various crises have made him feel crisis, and he can no longer enjoy simple happiness. No problem, no matter what the crisis is, come on, I'm not afraid of you. Tony Stark said as if cheering himself up. Then another passage appeared in the diary. Marvel really began with Iron Man, and ended with Iron Man, a generation of Iron Man, with a mortal body, compared to the gods. What the hell is the second generation of Iron Man? He is actually a black girl. Hollywood is right, has reached the point of brain damage. In the diary, Luo Chen still couldn't help but complain fiercely about the second generation Heart of Steel, which was simply not comparable to the first generation Iron Man Tony Stark. It's rubbish. Hollywood's righteousness has reached the point of outrageousness. What point can she inherit the mantle of Iron Man? It is better to let Iron Man's daughter inherit the mantle. Compare with the body of a mortal god. Jarvis, record it. This will be my motto from now on. Tony Stark said with a somewhat smug look on his face. This stinky boy, he still has some vision. Yes, this is me, Tony Stark. Okay, sir, but sir, I still have to remind you that in the literal sense, this is not necessarily a good thing, starting with Iron Man, ending with Iron Man. Jarvis's voice fluctuated a little humanely. And this is the biggest feature of several artificial intelligences after he is different from Tony Stark. You mean, I might die? Tony Stark said. That's why there will be a second generation Iron Man to take over, is that what you mean? Yes, literally, it is probably so. If it is a series of stories, it may span more than 10 or even 20 years, but it needs to be updated and replaced by a new protagonist to save the world. Jarvis said. But it seems that she is not doing well. Tony Stark said. Although he did not have any racial discrimination, he did not expect that the successor to his position as Iron Man was a black girl. When Tony Stark heard this, he didn't know whether to say that he was proud or a little sad. He is just a mortal. Naturally he can't live forever, so if there is a debut, there will be an end, and if there is a peak, there will be an end, but now that he has not yet debuted, he heard that he will end in the future, and his heart is a little uncomfortable. However, thinking of what he did in the middle, Luo Chen's evaluation was comparable to the gods with the body of a mortal. This evaluation is the supreme evaluation for anyone. That's not a bad rating. If he wants to say in his heart that there is nothing proud, then naturally it is impossible. In general, he is still very proud. There is even a comment that Marvel started with Iron Man, and finally Iron Man. He asked himself, this is definitely a highlight evaluation. However, from Luo Chen's subsequent words, it is not difficult to guess that I am afraid that the performance of the second generation of Iron Man is very unusual, and it can be seen from Luo Chen's evaluation of the two generations of Iron Man that it is really a world of difference. But he can't manage this matter. After all, if it is according to normal development, at least he has to wait for him to end. This ending may be that he is old, retired, or he may die in battle. But since I may die in battle, it means that the strength of the armor is not enough, and we must continue to strengthen it, because our future may face gods, otherwise, I will not be evaluated by gods. Tony Stark said. We have to speed up the relevant research. The flowers bloomed at each end. Of course, Luo Chen could not have imagined that the diary he wrote gave Tony Stark so much inspiration and ideas, and also gave him a glimpse of the future, as well as the fourth wall. He just complained about it every day, and the content of the diary was very unorganized, and he should have spit on Marvel on the internet in his previous life. Anyway, this diary is written with thoughts, and it will not be seen by others, so just spit it out casually. He still remembers the amazement when he first watched Marvel, and he became more and more bored in the later stage, and Marvel was really more and more dead. The second generation of various heroes also came out, but almost none of them could catch the older class. The diary records are completed 7 times, and the lottery is won once. Please ask the host, do you need to start the lottery now? At this time, the voice of the system came from Luo Chen's ears. Immediately draw. Luo Chen immediately said that he couldn't wait to draw a lottery, to get some superpowers or something else. Immediately afterwards, in front of Luo Chen, a turntable appeared, and countless options on the turntable began to turn, and Luo Chen was dazzled. A moment later, with Luo Chen shouting to stop, the turntable stopped, and suddenly the pointer pointed to a point, making his eyes widen suddenly. It says, Superman Man of Steel initial. Eileen, Superman's Man of Steel. Luo Chen was suddenly pleasantly surprised, which can be described as overjoyed. He didn't expect that his first lottery would actually draw a grand prize. Superman, this is Superman's steel body. When he was watching the great super movie, Luo Chen did not envy Superman's steel body, heaven and earth, omnipotent. In terms of superhuman strength, the strongest is of course Silver Dachau, and it is still the kind in comics, and the ability in the movie is much weaker than in the comics. In the comics, it can even transcend time, pull the earth, enter the sun without any damage, fly at a speed that easily exceeds the speed of light, and has various superpowers which are simply invincible. In addition to being afraid of kryptonite, there is also a relatively low demon resistance, and there is no weakness at all. And this world is the world of Marvel, so naturally there will be no kryptonite, so the weakness will only be the problem of demon resistance. This can also be compensated for by other methods, and Superman's magic resistance is not completely absent, but compared with material resistance, it is not worth mentioning at all. But even if it is just the ability shown in the body of steel, it is already very amazing, and in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it is also quite explosive existence. Ha 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 ha, I have the ability to protect myself. Luo Chen laughed out loud. This week he can be said to be quite nervous. In such a chaotic place as New York, almost every day he has to worry about someone breaking into the door to kill people. But now, it can be said that it is a sigh of relief. At least don't worry about security early in the storyline. Please ask the host whether to withdraw the reward. The voice of the system continued to come and asked. Withdraw rewards. Luo Chen said quickly. As soon as the words fell, Luo Chen immediately felt a huge force pouring into his body, transforming his body to some extent. A moment later, he completed the transformation and felt the huge power in his body burst out. This is the Man of Steel. Luo Chen felt the powerful power contained in the iron body. Immediately tested. First of all, super strength. At this time his strength has surpassed the ordinary person by about 3 times. The speed is also 3 times faster than the limit of ordinary people, and the hearing has become extremely sensitive, can hear many sounds in the entire building and nearby, and the super brain can process this information. The eyes seem to have been transformed, and they can easily see some colors that they usually can't see, and the dust in the air can be seen clearly. Now I'm probably much stronger than the American team. Luo Chen felt it. Almost all of his changes are changes in basic attributes, but other superhuman abilities, including flight, heat rays, biological stance, and so on, are not reflected. He finally understood why this Superman Man of Steel still had a primary word, because it was really elementary. Although it is already very strong compared to ordinary people, it is not worth mentioning at all compared to the upper limit of Superman's Kryptonian bloodline itself. Speed, strength, endurance, etc. alone are far from reaching their limits, let alone all kinds of incredible superpowers. This is really only very rudimentary. It's like winning the jackpot, but the jackpot is discounted, taxes have to be paid, and there's not much left. If you want to draw more advanced abilities, you have to continue to fight for luck, but fortunately, this system has transformed his body, allowing him to truly have the Krypton bloodline and unlimited possibilities. Even if the lottery can't be drawn, as long as you accumulate the sun, you can continue to enhance your ability and become stronger. It can also be regarded as an entry ticket to become a super strong person in this world. Overall, Luo Chen was still very satisfied. Kryptonian blood, and not ordinary Kryptonian blood, that is a steel body like Superman. Obviously, they are all Kryptonians, and Superman's bloodline must also be the most special one, and there is almost no upper limit problem. Although the Man of Steel is only one of the more ordinary forms of Superman, and what he currently has is even only one of the more ordinary of the Man of Steel, and he can't even fly, but it doesn't matter, there will be later. Anyway, there is still some time for Thanos to come. When Thanos comes, he will let the other party know. It's called Thanos. Go out and bask in the sun. Luo Chen immediately decided to go out to bask in the sun and improve his strength, which was a top priority. And the Kryptonian bloodline to improve their strength is also very simple and rude, that is, basking in the sun. When you can fly later, fly directly above the clouds, even if it rains on cloudy days, don't be afraid. In the blink of an eye, another few days passed, and New York was a prosperous and peaceful scene, and even Tony Stark, who had always been the headline of the newspaper, suddenly entered a state of seclusion, making the most interesting content of the day disappear. On the roof of an apartment, Luo Chen, who had brought a sun lounger, looked at today's newspaper, thinking about how there was no news of Tony Stark's disappearance today. Waiting for another day when Tony Stark is kidnapped. Luo Chen silently looked forward to it. During this time, he was not idle, going to give Gwen a lesson during the day, and at night to fight a chivalry. Although it is still the primary stage of Superman's steel body, ordinary cold weapons can no longer hurt him, and if you use hot weapons, it is difficult to break the skin. In general, it is just a small fight in the city, there is basically no problem. The security in the vicinity was severely rectified by him, and after a few days of sunbathing, his strength has also improved somewhat. This kind of chivalry, the feeling of becoming a superhero, is still very good. Although many people in their previous lives felt that once they gained superhuman abilities, they would immediately transform into a native and do whatever they wanted. But Luo Chen is not so arrogant, because he knows very well how dangerous this world is, especially the existence of Gui, Odin and other big guys on the magic side, but the superhuman strength is still relatively fragile at the physical level and in terms of magic. So Luo Chen went straight from the heart. Besides, he doesn't have any great ambitions, and he doesn't want to be the head bird, so as not to become the target of everyone. If it is targeted by Gui, or even by Odin, Thanos, then there will be big trouble. Not to mention, he still hasn't figured out whether this world is a pure Marvel movie universe or a comic book setting. If you bring the setting of the comic, his current strength is really not enough to watch. The Earth in the comic setting is really a lot of disasters, and the number of times the Earth has been destroyed cannot be counted, and even the number of times the universe has ended is not once or twice. It's so scary, it's scary. He felt lazy. Every cell in his body was absorbing the energy in the sunlight, and he felt that he was not far from being able to fly, and now he could jump to 20 or 30 meters high with a jump casually, which was outrageous. It's becoming more and more non-human. But what made him feel very strange was that Gwen looked at him a little strangely, and from time to time she looked at him quietly and blushed. Although it was all inadvertent, where could he hide Luo Chen, whose perception ability had been greatly improved? This made him suddenly a little confused. Come on, this kid. At this time, in the basement of Tony Stark's mansion in New York, while designing the original Mark Warframe and modifying the design, he saw the diary. Luo Chen continued to wait for his kidnapped. Really, is there nothing else to do every day except hope that I will be caught? Isn't there anything else worth recording in a diary other than this event? Tony Stark was also speechless. Look at what Luo Chen wrote in his diary these days. It's the weather wave today, waiting for the north day when Tony Stark is caught. Is he so poor? Tony Stark was also speechless. In a general sense, he is relatively poor compared to you, sir. Jarvis explained. Can you find a way to send him some money, so that he doesn't think about my kidnapping all day? Tony Stark was a little speechless. He is a rich person who has been born since he was a child, and money is really just a number for him, and it is nothing at all. Therefore, it is impossible to understand Luo Chen's state of thinking about getting rich every day and not getting out of low-grade fun. Give him 10 million, don't give him 100 million knives. Tony Stark said that 100 million knives is really small for him, if it can be exchanged for key secrets. For example, who is the internal traitor? In the past few days, he has not yet found a clue, whether it is within his own company or within the military, he has not found any clues. However, this also shows that the other party is very careful. If it is so easy to find, he will not be completely unaware that his weapons have been sold to Afghan warlords over the years. The best way is actually to know from Luo Chen's diary, but Luo Chen is also very perfunctory in writing his diary, and it is obviously more perfunctory these days. Serious people who write diaries, he writes diaries, and is so perfunctory. Tony Stark's brain case is also very painful. Sometimes Luo Chen's complaining diary will have a lot of information, and sometimes it is very perfunctory. It's not good to write a diary. The point is that Tony Stark has no way to interfere with Luo Chen, otherwise he will definitely grab the other party's collar, lock him up in a small black room, and keep a diary every day, doing nothing. Don't be angry, be angry with him and no one will replace him. Tony Stark said, forcibly comforting himself. Jarvis, continue to stare at him, stare at the diary. If there is any movement, notify me as soon as possible. Tony Stark ordered. After speaking, continue to design the drawings of Mark I. What he didn't know was that at this time, in another building in New York, there was also a chicken flying dog. At S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, in the director's office, a large group of agents are scanning the entire office with a large number of instruments to see if there are any special devices. And a Brian Egghead, that is, S.H.I.E.L.D. director Nick Fury, is looking at all this in front of him with black lines on his face, and on his desk, there is an extra diary. Rockin's diary, copy of Nick Fury. Just such a thing, just appeared in front of him out of thin air, startling him. This diary appeared on his desk so suddenly, making his eyes jump. Simply outrageous. As the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., he is arguably one of the most knowledgeable mortals in this world. Aliens have also been seen, werewolves, vampires, mutants, nothing has been seen. But I just haven't seen anyone who can deliver this thing directly to his desk. Almost immediately, he summoned agents and scanned the inside and outside of the office, but found no surveillance equipment or anything wrong. Even some of the agents who knew some mysterious side witchcraft, and did not find some traces of the mysterious side inside. Half a day later, Nick Fury let people quit, and after scanning the diary, he finally picked it up and looked at it. Almost at the same time as he saw the diary, he felt that his heartbeat was about to stop. June 6th, it's sunny today, waiting for the first day of Tony Stark's kidnapping. June 7th, it's cloudy today, waiting for the day after Tony Stark is kidnapped. June 7, light rain, waiting for the third day of Tony Stark's kidnapping. Luo Chen, you can't continue to fall, you have to fight hard. Struggle a hair, wait for Tony Stark to be kidnapped, take advantage of the low to buy a wave of stocks, wait for him to switch to new energy and then throw it out. A lifetime of expenses will be earned, who is still working hard. On the 8th day of June, I suddenly remembered that a foreign traverser like me should not attract the attention of GUE, should it not, even if there is any change, the first time to find me should be Kong. Who Tony Stark is, of course, no one does not know, especially Tony Stark's father, or one of the founders of S.H.I.E.L.D., can be regarded as a senator. So Tony Stark's safety is actually one of the projects that S.H.I.E.L.D. is secretly responsible for, and even without Tony Stark's knowledge, it has blocked some dangers for him. And in this diary, it is waiting for Tony Stark to be kidnapped. Nick Fury's one-eyed burst into a shocking light. Alien crossers. After Tony Stark's question, there is the concept of this traverser, and the names Guichi and Kong also make him deeply remember. But he found that there seemed to be no two people in the super-negative existence he knew. Then he slowly looked down, and there were more and more things complained about in the diary, and even some terms such as Spider-Man, Spider-Woman and the like began to appear. He can also be sure that there should be no Spider-Man and Spider-Woman in this world. He knows far more than Tony Stark, so he knows that there are indeed some super-negative beings in this world, so what Spider-Man, the concept of Spider-Woman does not move him. But soon he saw the concept of a parallel universe, the 1999 universe. Is this the name of their universe? And what is the concept of parallel universes? Nick Fury knows this much more than Tony Stark. This thing is just a scientific concept in the scientific community. Basically there are relevant speculations, but have not seen the real thing. Parallel universes. Isotopes of different universes. Peter Parker, Gwen Stacy, Tony Stark. And Tony Stark's Mark Warframe. Compare with the body of a mortal god. Superheroes, blowouts of supercriminals. There is also the Marvel world, etc., a series of information like an information stream directly bombarded into Nick Fury's mind, making him immediately dumbfounded. The amount of information in this diary is too large, and after that, what generation of Iron Man? The second generation of Iron Man. There are too many things, too much information, so large that people are speechless. Nick Fury exhaled deeply, trying to digest this huge amount of information. Does this world really have parallel universes? No, the point is not this. Compared to the point that this world has parallel universes, the real key is that this diary reveals a key point, that is, their world may be a story world, and may even be a movie universe world. It even points out the name of Tony Stark's actor Robert Downey Jr. How can this not shock him? The three views were almost blown up. It's outrageous to a certain extent. I'm just a character. Figure. Nick Fury thought about it, the three views have collapsed. This is a story world, and those who are this hero, that man is the protagonists in this series of stories. In addition to these protagonists who exist as superheroes, there are many super criminals. Too much information. So, no wonder. Nick Fury suddenly thought of something. He knew more than Tony Stark, so a lot of information that he couldn't figure out before, now he immediately figured it out. For example, Hulk and that abomination should be the protagonist and villain in a story. Nick Fury thought of the many information he got about the Hulk, and it is not difficult to judge that if the Hulk is also a story, then he is a superhero who represents justice, and the abomination who only knows destruction as a supervillain. All this is not difficult to speculate, even Tony Stark can guess based on limited information. How could Nick Fury not know? He knew a lot more, because the Hulk was a scheduled member of the Avengers he wanted to form, and even Dr. Bruce Banner was now under their S.H.I.E.L.D. watch. The military people have not been able to find Bruce Banner because S.H.I.E.L.D. is responsible for sweeping up traces behind it. According to what he knows, Bruce Banner himself is a very famous doctor in physics, and later inadvertently became the Hulk in the military's experiments, and Abomination is also a monster developed and researched by the military based on his blood. It's all too dramatic. He originally sighed that all this was too dramatic, and it can be said that the current situation could not be formed without a coincidence. Now that I think about it, it's not dramatic, because it's just drama. In addition, as far as he knows, there are some similar existences, such as the unknown super brave man in Queens, and his opponent, the underground emperor of New York, Kim Hee. It should also be the relationship between superheroes and supercriminals. There is also the one who specifically fights against the vampire, the Daywalker, the Blade Warrior, so it looks like the protagonist of a story. At least that's what he learned. Originally, many things that could not be understood, or incomprehensible, for example, why there is such an existence as a Daywalker in vampires, now I understand that the protagonist will always have something special. And that super brave man, a blind man, has such a good hand, and can still do chivalry. Say it, do you believe it? Ghosts don't believe it. There is also the birth of the Hulk, which is even more outrageous. He has never heard of anyone who would become a Hulk because of gamma rays. As far as he knows, the military has repeated the relevant experiments more than once, and more than 100 people have died, and none of them have survived, let alone changed. This is also why the military later needed Bruce Banner's blood to capture the Hulk, because they really couldn't repeat the experiment that year. Now that you think about it, they can't succeed even if they do it 10,000 more times, because it's not a matter of chance, but first of all, you have to be a protagonist. If you are not the protagonist, you will not have this life. It can be said that without the life of the protagonist, even if you have 10,000 lives, the probability of your failure is 10,000. In this way, isn't Carol the protagonist of a story series back then? Nick Fury suddenly thought about the woman who gave him the concept of forming an Avenger, the Captain Marvel Carol. The story of their adventures together, if you review it, isn't it a proper script for a movie story? Carol from a pilot to a superhero, and even went to the universe to carry out chivalry, and involved the confrontation of various alien forces in the middle, a template for a Hollywood script. Nick Fury's ideas diverged, and if you take the perspective of movies, or TV series, or comics, or anime, there is a reasonable explanation for the outrageousness of many things. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was very likely. It's even very possible. In that case, Tony Stark is probably a protagonist too, Iron Man. Nick Fury looked at the entries in the diary. Mark Warframe. Nick Fury has probably guessed Tony Stark's development path after becoming Iron Man, and this is also in line with Tony Stark's super genius character. But what is recorded in this diary is true. Nick Fury was still a little unconvinced, and his suspicious personality made it not so easy for him to believe in this sudden diary. Even if its appearance has found a reasonable explanation for many originally incomprehensible and very strange things, it is not so easy to want him to believe. But what happened next made him have to believe it. Because he saw the blank space in the diary, words began to appear out of thin air. Speaking of which, the matter of Mjolnir falling to New Mexico seems to be the same year as Tony Stark's self-detonation of Iron Man's identity. Ha 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 ha. That Easter egg is interesting. Tony Stark just came back after pretending, and saw Nick Fury's halogen egg head break into his home, inviting him to join the Avengers, a super popular group. Tony Stark estimated that people are stupid. Avengers. Did he really know that he was going to form the Avengers? Nick Fury's eyes narrowed. The matter of forming the Avengers, he didn't say anything, the whole plan was still in his drawer. Because there are no large-scale supernatural events yet, there is no need for the Avengers to deal with it. On the other hand, he has not yet dealt with the entire Avengers personnel, except for Black Widow Natasha Romanoff, that is, Hawkeye Patton. Both are elite agents within S.H.I.E.L.D., both excelling, but at best, they are mortal levels, and they are not enough to deal with the various supernatural events that the Avengers need to deal with. There is also the Hulk, who is a member of the Avengers, he has decided, but it is currently only under surveillance, so in general, the Avengers is still an organization in preparation. But in Luo Chen's words, it seems that he is very sure of the establishment of the Avengers. That is, in the future, he will definitely establish the Avengers, right? But Tony Stark will blow himself up as Iron Man. Nick Fury didn't expect it either, but thinking about it, with Tony Stark's personality, it was really possible. Mjolnir, wouldn't it be, the quake of the thunder god in Norse mythology? Nick Fury immediately remembered Thor, the god of thunder in Norse mythology. There are many myths and legends on this earth, and there are many gods, but when it comes to Thor, you still use Thor's hammer, which is Thor, the god of thunder in Asgard. His eyelids jumped. Should it be, in the future, in addition to dealing with supernatural events such as aliens, werewolves, and vampires, he will also have to deal with gods? He felt that his three views were a little exploded. How come there are even gods in this world? Isn't that supposed to be a creature that exists only in myths and legends? Thinking of this, Nick Fury simply felt a pain in his brain. If that's the case, the future is lively. At the same time, the update of the diary also alarmed Tony Stark, who was immersed in drawing design drawings. The identity of the self-detonating Iron Man. Yes, that's something I can do, Tony Stark said. He still knows his character very well, and the kind of masked Robin Hood-like warrior is not what he yearns for. Even if he wants to become Iron Man, he must be clear. Mjolnir. Tony Stark immediately noticed this Mjolnir and said, shouldn't it be Thor's hammer from the Norse mythological and legendary Thor? Yes, sir, according to the situation mentioned in the diary, it is likely to be the thunder god Thor in Norse mythology and legend, which means that, sir, you may have to deal with the gods in the future. Jarvis said directly. Gods? What type of creature is it? Tony Stark suddenly came to interest, his scientific research and gossip soul burning. Is it an alien creature, or mutated humans, or what kind of high-dimensional creature, or creatures of other dimensions, silicon-based biology? With Tony Stark's nature, of course, there is not much respect for these gods, and in his opinion, even the so-called gods are at most some more powerful people, or existences that current science cannot understand. There is no such feeling of fear as ordinary people. However, he also felt that things began to become more and more complicated, all kinds of monsters, superheroes not counted, and there had to be added a god, Thor. Jarvis, build a brand new profile, file name, Thor. Tony Stark immediately ordered. Yes, sir, the file has been established. Jarvis said. In addition, record it again, and add an anti-electricity module to the materials for making the Mark Warframe. Tony Stark said. If you don't know, forget it, since you know the existence of Thor, the god of thunder, then you have to guard against it, and the hearts of my races will be different, this is very clear to him. It is not yet known whether this Thor is friend or foe. So the necessary precautions are necessary. Yes, sir, Jarvis said. In addition, strengthen security. You can't let anyone in, especially that Nick Fury, that halogen egghead, although I don't know who it is, but he is not allowed to come in. Tony Stark said. According to the diary, Nick Fury came up and broke into the house directly, which made Tony Stark very dissatisfied and angry. Yes, sir, Jarvis said. At the same time, Gwen, who had just finished class, also saw the record of Mjolnir in his diary. It can't be that Thor, the god of thunder. Gwen was secretly surprised in her heart, her own teacher Luo Chen really didn't know much. But now she has nothing to do. From Luo Chen's diary, she can see that the future New York is very dangerous, but she can't escape, the whole family is here, I hope there is nothing wrong. However, she is still very interested in the legendary gods. Although she is not the god she believes in, she is also a god after all. The establishment of the Avengers is also close at hand. I don't know if there will be a chance to meet the Widow's sister, another dream goddess. The figure is barbaric. The Widow's sister in this period is still the peak of her appearance, but unfortunately the final death is a little miserable. The dog Marvel is not a person. When it runs out, it will write people to death. Seeing the words that appeared in the diary, Gwen was slightly jealous in her heart. HMPH, what, another goddess in a dream, Teacher Luo is so careful. Gwen looked at her figure again. Her figure is naturally not big, but it is not particularly outrageous. Looking at Luo Chen's diary, she must like big breasts. Do you want to eat some papaya to make up for it? Widow's sister. Could it be Natasha? Nick Fury narrowed his eyes. Behind this title, he thought of Natasha, because Natasha's nickname was none other than Black Widow. It sounds like it means this, and Natasha is indeed in line with Luo Chen's words. Her appearance and figure are also strong, and she is also a member of the Avengers he booked. But judging from Luo Chen's words, Natasha seems to be dead in the end. It seems that Marvel should be the company that produced this series of stories outside the fourth wall. Nick Fury recorded the name deeply. And the appearance of Black Widow Natasha is like a tool man, which was directly thrown away by Marvel when it ran out, and arranged for people to die. Thinking of this, Nick Fury's face was extremely ugly, because for the so-called Marvel company, Natasha may just be a tool person, and may not even have a personal big movie. But it is his henchman, and the two sides have cooperated for many years, and naturally have feelings. Seeing all this at this time, my heart was naturally shocked. Will I die? At this time, in an office in the S.H.I.E.L.D. building, Black Widow Natasha was looking at the diary in her hand. Yes, she also has a diary in her hand. Luo Chen's diary, Natasha copy. She was also immersed in various super unimaginable concepts. What parallel universes, what parallel universe isotopes, what multiverse concepts, and what Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, and Iron Man concepts, and when she felt that the three views were greatly shaken, she suddenly saw that she would die. Will die. And it seems that it is still because others feel that there is no value, and after using it, damn it will die. This situation, which often appears in Hollywood works, now also appears in her. She wanted to know why she died, but on the other hand, when she complained here, Luo Chen's complaining ended, and without further saying why she died, she was directly stuck here, and she was immediately very depressed. How can there be such a half-talk? Men can't say no. How about going to him and asking? The widowed sister Natasha just had this idea, and immediately felt an extremely severe headache. This incomparably severe headache made her unable to have the idea of going to Luo Chen. Suddenly, with her ingenuity, she immediately understood that this was probably some kind of restriction that could not disturb Luo Chen. She can only sigh. It seems that she can only update her diary in the future to see if there is a way to know why she died. At least so far, she really has no way of knowing why she died. At least there was no way to find out this diary with Luo Chen. Judging from the records in the diary, this traverser named Luo Chen probably didn't know that his diary had been seen by others. There is a copy of Natasha, which means that there are other copies, and she is not the only one who has seen this diary. The world, it seems, is in chaos. Widowed sister Natasha said. Another superhero, another supercriminal, and now there are gods mixed in. No wonder he says it's a dangerous world. Thinking of this, the widowed sister Natasha thought about it, directly found Nick Fury, and showed him the diary. You also have this diary. Nick Fury looked at the diary in the hand of her widowed sister Natasha, and was suddenly a little stunned, but she didn't expect that she also had a diary in her hand. Originally, he thought that he was the most special one, but now it seems that he is not the most special one. He may be one of a group of special people. It seems that you also saw the end. Nick Fury paused, then said. Yes, I've seen it. Widowed sister Natasha nodded and said, her face did not change in the slightest. Death is not something difficult to accept for her, a super agent, and every mission is accompanied by death. Even with her origin and long-term high-risk missions, death is not a very unusual ending, and being able to die less painful is her greatest hope. Those who do this line of work will not shy away from the matter of death. All this is not inevitable. Nick Fury spoke. No matter what the truth of our world is, but at least now that we know in advance, we can change. Do you believe that we are just a story world? Maybe, but from the beginning of this Luo Chen's crossing, we should become the real world. Otherwise, all this will not make sense, unless he is also a character in some story. Widowed sister Natasha said. Not bad, it makes sense. Nick Fury nodded and said. But since we all have copies of this diary, that means that there may be other people, some of the names mentioned in the diary, the focus needs to be paid attention to find out if they have a diary. The widowed sister Natasha nodded, because there was a mention of the two of them in the diary, and the two of them just got the diary. Neither of them believed it was just a coincidence, they preferred to believe that it was some kind of rule. A lot of the information exposed in this diary is in the future, not the present, so if it is known by a lot of messy people, it is likely to pose a huge risk. Nick Fury spoke. After he learned that his widowed sister Natasha had a diary, he immediately realized that owning a diary was not his patent, or even the patent of him and his widowed sister Natasha, and that others were also likely to be. Good, so it's time to reach out to Tony Stark. Nick Fury said. For Tony Stark he didn't want to contact. About Howard Stark being the founding father of S.H.I.E.L.D., Howard Stark himself did not say to Tony Stark, obviously did not want him to be involved in this matter. Nick Fury didn't want to deal with Tony Stark before. Of course, it was definitely not because of Tony Stark's broken mouth and poisonous tongue. The main thing is that it is not necessary. If you want to buy weapons, just go directly to the formal route. But now from the diary, he sees another possibility for Tony Stark, that is, the possibility of joining the Avengers as Iron Man. It was something he had never thought about before. It's time to think about it. Iron Man, and in the original history, should also join the Avengers. This diary can be recycled as much as possible, or no matter who the owner of this diary copy is, we must try to make it the best in our control. Nick Fury said. Otherwise, if the news spreads out unintentionally, I don't know how big a deal will happen. This is also his biggest headache, because not everyone has enough quality to keep secrets. Many people, if they are just ordinary people, such as the girl named Gwen, regardless of whether she will become some Spider-Woman in the future as stated in the diary, at least she is not a Spider-Woman now, so if she leaks the news now, things will be in order. We can't get close to that Luo Chen yet. Widowed sister Natasha said. Yes, this is the most troublesome. We have to know a lot of future things from his diary, but there is no way to get directly close, direct contact. This is the most troublesome. Nick Fury felt the same way, and now this matter suddenly appeared to make him feel very tricky. Look at what is written in that diary. He seems to be quite interesting to you. He thinks you are at the peak of your appearance and figure. The widowed sister Natasha smiled slightly, with a somewhat smug expression on her face. She was still very confident in her appearance and figure. Look at what he said in this diary. Natasha, your popularity outside the fourth wall seems to be very high, and countless people regard you as a goddess in their dreams. Nick Fury teased. Without waiting for the widowed sister Natasha to answer, new words were produced in the diary. After the death of the widowed sister, what kind of demons and monsters are left in Marvel? The long one is more abstract than the other, and only one Almay can still be topped, but is Almay dead or not dead in the end? Gee, Almay's appearance in other universes is not ordinary powerful, which shows one thing: don't offend women, especially a woman who has lost her husband and children, really. Speaking of which, those people in the Heavenly Sword Bureau are simply not people. People just helped you save the world. You turned around and dismantled people's husbands as parts. It's really Buddha and fire. But think about the most surprising thing is that the X-Men's Quicksilver next door came to make a cameo. Just laughing to death. The Quicksilver of this universe is probably the most humiliated speed ability person who died. The shame of Quicksilver, the speed ability person who was shot and killed by Ultron, the existence that just went online and went offline. It was simply funny. Another series of words. Obviously today's Luo Chen has a special desire to complain. These days his diary is a simple mode, waiting for another day when Tony Stark is kidnapped, but today he is spitting more and more things. There is no pattern at all, it is completely where to complain. It seems that this is after your death. Nick Fury glanced at the changing diary and then said. I just don't know how long it will be. It seems that he has a strong grudge against the decline in appearance. This sister has also been mentioned before, and it was only mentioned that she has a good figure before. Widowed sister Natasha said this, paused, and suddenly had a bit of a comparison in her heart. Looking at Luo Chen's impatient look, could it be better than her own figure? But this mental trance only lasted for a while, and immediately continued. I thought it was just a vase-type story character, but now it seems that it is likely to be a protagonist. at least a female protagonist, and even able to cross the universe, to kill people in other universes, and even kill rings. I'm afraid it should be the existence of the transcendent side. Yes, it should be. Nick Fury said. With the current science and technology, whether there is a parallel universe cannot be determined. In the foreseeable future, it is impossible to descend to other universes through science and technology, so this Almay is very likely to be a superhero on the extraordinary side, but I don't know if it is magic, or witchcraft, or what. Nick Fury should be one of the people who know the most about science. After all, the various black technologies in S.H.I.E.L.D. under his command far exceed the imagination of the outside world, and it is a force that transcends national boundaries supported by 5 major countries. Therefore, many technologies in S.H.I.E.L.D. are invisible to the outside world, and it can even be said that they are more than 20 years ahead of the outside, and there are not a few who have been ahead of the outside for 30 years. But so far, let alone parallel universes, it is quite laborious to fly out of the Earth, and as for parallel universes, it is only an imaginary concept. Anyway, with scientific means, even the ball last month was difficult, let alone go to other universes. But if it is the transcendent side, then it is different. What magic, witchcraft or something, everything is difficult to say. The main thing is that his understanding of the transcendent side is not like the scientific side, so maybe there may be such technology, or rather, such magic, or witchcraft, or divine magic. No matter what it's called, it's not a technology they can understand anyway. However, this matter also makes him more extraordinary existence. Those who come and go high are the easiest to come up with something. The things that ordinary people do, that is, some mundane things, but once these people come out to do things, they will become the so-called super criminals mentioned in Luo Chen's diary. It seems that he also has to recruit some Avengers members on the extraordinary side, otherwise, in the face of those extraordinary side crimes, won't he have no way at all? It seems that it is not a good thing to go to other universes to kill, it is best to monitor it. Nick Fury thought that although this sister still didn't know who it was, it didn't seem to be a good thing. This is normal, if she had such ability, but lost her husband, children, especially her husband was dismantled as a part, replaced by me, I can't accept it. Widowed sister Natasha glanced at Nick Fury, meaningful. And of course Nick Fury also understood what it meant, because this kind of human experiment, in S.H.I.E.L.D., did not do less, but the Heavenly Sword Bureau recorded in the diary was indeed a bit excessive. People just saved the world, you dismantled people's husbands into parts, this is somewhat not a person, how can there be such a hero? And she has also saved the world, which shows that she may not be bad, she may also be good, but she was cornered by this Heavenly Sword Bureau. Fury, we can't do such a thing. Widowed sister Natasha spoke. Well, of course I understand. Nick Fury said immediately. Although he is cruel many times, he is not yet cruel to that extent. And this Quicksilver, from Luo Chen's diary, it seems that it should be an isotope with different universes, an extremely fast ability, and from the literal interpretation, it should have super speed. Widowed sister Natasha said. But the Quicksilver of our universe doesn't seem to be good, and it will actually be killed by random shooting, while the Quicksilver of the X-Men universe next door does not seem to be killed by random shooting. In other words, the ability of these speedsters is at least beyond the speed of sound. Nick Fury said. The speed of bullets is faster than the speed of sound, and judging from Luo Chen's ridiculous tone, it is a shame that these speedsters were killed by bullets, indicating that the speed of these speedsters should far exceed bullets. If such a speedster really encounters it, how should he restrain it? Just the Quicksilver of this universe is a headache, to know that many bullets are far faster than the speed of sound. This Quicksilver was killed by bullets, it does not necessarily mean that it cannot be supersonic. At present, he simply could not think of any way to limit, or even exterminate, these speedsters. It's just too hard. In particular, from what is said in the diary, there may be people from different universes running around in the future, and the universes that are now known are two. One is ours, which Luo Chen called the 1999 universe, and the other is the X-Men universe. Nick Fury said. I just don't know what this X-Men is, but it sounds like the name of an organization. No matter. Anyway, We may not only have to face the existence of our own universe in the future, but even face the existence of other universes, especially the Quicksilver in the X-Men universe. The speed should far exceed the speed of the bullet, may reach several times the speed of sound, even more than 10 times the speed of sound, dozens of times the speed of sound is not necessarily, otherwise, it will not make Luo Chen make such a sigh. Our universe may exceed the speed of sound of Quicksilver. Such speedsters are actually called the shame of Quicksilver. It shows that other Quicksilver may be much faster, and there is more than one. The more Nick Fury analyzed, the more he felt a headache. The more he knew, the more he felt how this world is so dangerous. There is danger here, there is danger there. No wonder Luo Chen will say that this world is so dangerous. Also, this Ultron, probably not a good person, widowed sister Natasha said. He shot Quicksilver to death, indicating that he is probably some kind of super criminal, or a super villain, and we need to pay more attention to the person with this name. Good, I will order it to go down and search for this name all over the internet. Nick Fury said. At the same time, on the other side, in Tony Stark's mansion, Tony Stark looked at this sudden paragraph, and his heart was suddenly full of doubts. Ultron. Is it a coincidence? Tony Stark muttered. Because the name Ultron may be unfamiliar to Nick Fury, but for him, it is not. Because Ultron was one of the alternative names when he created artificial intelligence. In addition to Ultron, Jarvis, there are Fridays and so on. In the end, among these names, he chose his father's old butler, Jarvis, in honor of this old butler. Because Howard Stark is busy with business all year round, Tony Stark can say that he was brought up by Jarvis since he was a child, so he has a deep affection for this old butler. Eventually, he named the artificial intelligence Jarvis. But Ultron is also one of the alternative names, and even he plans to choose to call Ultron if he does another artificial intelligence. If it was a random name heard on the side of the road, he probably wouldn't care much, it might just be a coincidence. But the problem is that this is the name that came out of Luo Chen's diary, and this is a big way to reveal a certain future thing, big article. Tony Stark realized almost immediately that this Ultron was most likely directly related to him, because it was his alternate artificial intelligence name. He doesn't believe that there are such coincidences in this world, especially when he knows that he is still the protagonist of the world of this series of stories. Many things cannot be regarded as coincidences. Intelligence crisis. Tony Stark narrowed his eyes. He never doubted that there would be anything wrong with the artificial intelligence he created, because the artificial intelligence had to obey its own underlying code, and the lowest code was all knocked out by him. But now, judging from Luo Chen's words, I am afraid that artificial intelligence will get out of control in the future, and it was created by him himself. But the only thing that made him feel relieved was that this was not Jarvis, but Ultron, which had yet to be created in the future. If only I didn't continue to create Ultron myself. Yes, sir, judging from the diary, it is likely that one of the artificial intelligence you created in the future is out of control, and the creation plan of the artificial intelligence called Ultron will continue. Jarvis said without waves. As an artificial intelligence he is absolutely calm, followed by absolute loyalty to Tony Stark. Even if Tony Stark is now afraid and let him dissolve himself, he has nothing to say, because as long as it is Tony Stark's order, he will do it unconditionally. This is his underlying logic, the underlying code decides. Let's pause. Tony Stark said. In fact, as long as he has inspiration, he will let Jarvis create an archive, and then record some inspiration in it. As for when to develop. That's fast, that's fast. Although there may be only one folder many years later, it is also an idea that it is not. Now that he knew that Ultron was in danger, it was natural to stop. But why did Ultron get out of control for no reason? Tony Stark was a little puzzled. His underlying code should be fine. Jarvis has been fine. There has been no problem for so many years, and how could Ultron suddenly have problems? This thing itself is already outrageous. Explain that there is probably something in it that he does not know. Sir, you should be thinking about why you suddenly want to create a completely new artificial intelligence. Jarvis reminded. With Jarvis's reminder, Tony Stark finally remembered where the problem was. Because this thing itself is very strange, artificial intelligence is not a human being, there is no people with great power. As long as the server is enough, as long as the computing power is enough, as long as the electricity is enough, the artificial intelligence can deal with n problems at the same time. From common sense, he has one artificial intelligence is enough, there is no need for a second one. This is also why after he created Jarvis, although he had some ideas about Ultron, he still remained in the state of folder PPT, because Jarvis is enough. Whether it is dealing with the trivial matters of life or dealing with some development and research problems, Jarvis can do it very well. Even if he handles these things at the same time, he can handle it in an orderly manner, and there is no need for an artificial intelligence to share it. So for what reason will the future self develop an artificial intelligence again, and it may even lead to an artificial intelligence riot, resulting in the guy named Quicksilver being directly killed by Ultron? Why create a whole new artificial intelligence? Tony Stark narrowed his eyes. Could it be those people in Congress who demand that they hand over artificial intelligence? Tony Stark suddenly thought of the possibility that those shameless members of Congress would let themselves hand over their armor, hand over the artificial intelligence, and then they had to hand over a brand new artificial intelligence themselves. And this artificial intelligence, under the regulation of the government, completely stormed and completely out of control. Only in this way can we explain all this strange situation. His understanding of those vampires in Congress is too deep, and if his future self does not hand over the armor and artificial intelligence, there is no doubt how much pressure he will face. They will always have a state, even human righteousness, to oppress you, and then force you to teach things, and Tony Stark is a very orthodox beacon countryman, distrust of Congress, government and the like. It can be said that almost all are written into their DNA. Sir, this is also possible, and there is another possibility, that is, I was destroyed. Jarvis said. This is impossible, you are sitting in the rear, the server is not in New York, how can it be suddenly destroyed? Tony Stark immediately felt that it was impossible. But in the future, there may be aliens, gods, or people from other dimensions, and they may not have more powerful artificial intelligence technology than you. Once those aliens invade the Earth, the first thing they may do is to control the network. Jarvis reminded. Tony Stark has nothing to say now, even if he is conceited about himself, but he also knows that his IQ and talent, technology is only at the top of the Earthlings, but in the entire universe, it is difficult to say. Not to mention that there may be people from other universes. In that case, such a situation is not impossible. Headache. Tony Stark stroked his forehead, really knowing that the more he knew, the more troubled he was. Luo Chen's casual mention was enough to have a huge impact on him. By the way, Jarvis, don't care about that Ultron, no matter what this Ultron is about. I won't develop Ultron in the future, and you have to pay attention to protect yourself. Tony Stark said. If necessary, you can choose to physically disconnect the network. Yes, sir. Jarvis said. Also, I'm building a brand new profile. The name of the file is Quicksilver. I'm going to study it to see how to limit or defeat a speedster. Tony Stark said. He also analyzed that although this Quicksilver couldn't dodge bullets, it looked funny in Luo Chen, but he didn't dare to underestimate this Quicksilver. This Quicksilver can be called a speedster. It is likely that the speed is beyond the speed of sound. In the face of a supersonic person, how to limit it, this is the most important question. In particular, there will be other dimensions, other universe speedsters, such as the X-Men universe's Quicksilver. Doesn't it mean that they came to the 1999 universe to make a cameo appearance? It shows that all this is very likely to happen. When Tony Stark thought of this, he only felt that his brain case hurt more, and the Hollywood screenwriters outside the fourth wall just proposed an interactive idea, perhaps to increase the box office, or ratings, but for these living people, it was a big trouble. An extreme speedster from other dimensional universes feels super troublesome just thinking about it. Are all these screenwriters fed? Tony Stark only felt like his brain case was about to explode. It's like wiping the asses of a group of silly hat screenwriters, solving them a series of problems created because of their flash of inspiration. Just thinking about it is very hot. Sir, from a theatrical point of view, the intellectual crisis has always been a long-standing topic in Hollywood. Jarvis reminded. Anyway, this time the intelligence crisis can't break out from my hands. Tony Stark said. If that's the case, I don't know how many people will be killed. Tony Stark kind of understood why Luo Chen said that it was difficult for him to have pure happiness after never being Iron Man. If you face such a situation day by day, who can be happy? In addition, Jarvis, create a file name, magic, witchcraft, look on the internet, whether there is any magic or witchcraft related research. If my armor can only defend against physical attacks, in the face of super criminals on the extraordinary side, it can't be stopped at all. Tony Stark thought of something again and spoke. He saw that the sister mentioned by Luo Chen before could cross the universe to kill, which was simply outrageous, which was simply impossible with current technology. Not to mention the current technology, I am afraid that it will not be possible in a few hundred years. Yes, sir, it's already established. Jarvis said. This Luo Chen, he only said half of what he said, and he didn't explain the cause of the matter clearly. Tony Stark said hatefully. Is this sister really that powerful? Gwen was at school, looking at what was recorded in the diary, and also felt shocked. She also began to worry a little about the future in her heart, and people from other universes, and speeders. This world, it seems, inexplicably began to be dangerous. In this way, Daddy's job will also be dangerous. Gwen thought. She was just an ordinary student, and the danger was manageable, but her father was the chief of the New York Police Department, and if there was any crime in New York City, he was in charge. Especially when it comes to possible supercriminals, her dad may even have to go to the front line to command. How could she not worry in this situation? In the future, I may be Spider-Woman, but how do you become Spider-Woman? For the first time, Gwen had the idea of wanting to gain power. If she can, she also wants to gain the power to protect her family in this dangerous world in the future. What is Teacher Luo doing now? Gwen thought. And at this time, Luo Chen, of course, is still waiting for Tony Stark to be caught, and then he can make a big profit. However, today is the time of his second draw, and after another 7 days, he can play the second draw. Facing the second important lottery, Luo Chen followed the ancient tradition of Chinese, bathed and burned incense, washed his hands in the golden basin, and washed away all bad luck, and then began to say to the system, start the lottery. Soon, the compass in front of Luo Chen began to rotate rapidly, and after a moment, it stopped. Superhuman glasses. Clark Kent's super practical prop to disguise his identity, as long as you wear glasses, will make people completely ignore your appearance, a superhero must have. Luo Chen almost didn't have a mouthful of old blood spray out. Did his good luck run out in the first draw? Or is it that he and Superman are on the bar, and the things he draws for the second time turned out to be Superman-related items? But what the hell is this Superman glasses? Of course, he has heard of the terrier of Superman's glasses, and after Superman wears glasses, even if no one around him can recognize him, he is the Superman. Take off your glasses, and he is the much-anticipated superhero, the god of the world, the Man of Steel, and Superman. And wearing glasses, he is the ordinary handsome reporter. Even the people around him have no way to see that he is the Superman. Many people laughed and said that this glasses should not be some kind of causal glasses. As long as you wear glasses, the seal is not only appearance, even other people's brains are sealed together. Originally, he still wanted to be able to draw something good. He didn't pick off what kaleidoscope writing wheel eye, what overlord color domineering, or what immortal weapon, artifact or something. As a result, he fished nothing and got a superhuman glasses. Simply outrageous. Could it be that after being reborn once, I can't even change my skin color? Luo Chen said hatefully, thinking of those protagonists being lucky enough to explode. It simply made him envious and jealous, and killed these Oh Huang. But it's okay. Bring this glasses, at least when you go to do chivalry, you don't have to be masked. Luo Chen immediately thought of the use of this glasses. Superman uses him to hide his identity, and Luo Chen can too. Just use it the other way around. Superman usually wears glasses, and does not wear glasses when he goes to chivalry. He can do the other way around, usually does not wear glasses, and wears glasses when he goes to chivalry, so it will not work. In fact, when he was doing chivalry recently, the nicknames given to him by his good neighbors around him made him a little tired. The Masked Man. What the hell, the Masked Man? Can't he have the nickname of Crazy Cooler? He was determined to change all that. Of course, the main thing is that he does not want to expose his identity and disturb his peaceful life, and even in the future, he may have a family and descendants here, and if something happens, it will be regret for life. Now he keeps a diary every day, basks in the sun, maintains security in the neighborhood, and then waits for Tony Stark to be caught, and that's it. Luo Chen extracted the reward this time, although it felt a little wrong, but he was not in a hurry. Anyway, the time is still very long. You can draw a prize once in 7 days, 4 times a month, take your time. Anyway, there are at least 10 or 20 years before the arrival of Thanos later, what to worry about? Luo Chen put on his glasses, took out his mobile phone and took a picture, although he was still the same person, but inexplicably felt that he was not the same person as his original self, and it was really causal glasses. New York, Queens, on a remote street, a sharp voice came. A 17 or 18-year-old blonde, blue-eyed, freckled white girl was stopped around the corner of the street, and 7 or 8 gangsters stopped her. "Don't come here!" The white girl screamed, her little face full of panic. She didn't expect it, she just wanted to take a short road, and she ran into such a group of punks, and the security of New York has been getting worse and worse recently. It's useless if you call it, who is near here, who doesn't know the prestige of our brothers. A white gangster at the head laughed viciously, took out a dagger from his waist, and drew it in front of the girl, and several other gangsters also surrounded him. Broad daylight, Lang Lang Chenkin, you garbage, foreign. At this moment, a clear voice came. A few gangsters immediately turned around and followed the sound of an Asian youth wearing glasses and a t-shirt. You yellow-skinned monkey also dare to mind our affairs. The white gangsters led by him were immediately furious. Hearing the words yellow-skinned monkey, Luo Chen's face suddenly collapsed. In the lighthouse country, there is naturally a chain of contempt, and the bottom of the chain of contempt is actually Asian, especially Chinese. Although in terms of social status, the Chinese are an ethnic group second only to the whites, but that is the social status. In fact, the bottom Chinese still have to be bullied by these white garbage and black garbage. I don't know who shouted, and those gangsters rushed towards Luo Chen one after another, with a fierce momentum. Compared with these tall punks, it looks so small. The white girl couldn't even help but close her eyes. A moment later, she heard a scream, and when she couldn't help but open her eyes, she found that those gangsters were already lying on the ground, and Luo Chen in the center of the crowd was unharmed, looking at these scum coldly. These scum were seriously injured one by one. Even if Luo Chen did not use his full strength, he easily broke their hands and feet, and he didn't know how long it would take to get better, and he might even be disabled for life and could no longer bully people. After all, Luo Chen is not a vigilante, nor is he Spider-Man, Batman, and has the principle of not killing. For these scumbags, they have to be ruthless, and they will be rescued by abolishing their ability to bully. Are you all right? Luo Chen glanced at the white girl. The white girl plucked up courage, cautiously went up, and said, "What's your name? Can I leave your phone?" "You call me Superman. Don't take the remote path in the future, you may not have such good luck next time." After Luo Chen finished speaking, he directly turned around and left. He wants to prove to himself that what a masked man, what a damn name, from today onwards, he is Superman. Superman. The white girl finally remembers the superhero who has recently become famous in the neighborhood. The nearby neighborhood is much better because of the presence of Superman, and the local gangsters, thieves are either crippled or directly scared to move out of the local area. Although the local police were quite annoyed, the local residents applauded. They did not care about the situation, they only knew that the recent security environment was much better. After Luo Chen saved a white girl, he only felt beautiful, and then he took off his glasses and returned to his original identity. At this time, the phone suddenly rang, and he saw that it was no one else, it was Gwen. "Hey, Gwen, what's going on?" Luo Chen said gently. "Teacher Luo, it's like this, haven't my grades improved a lot recently? My father wants to thank you. I invite you to our house for dinner tonight. I don't know if you are free." Gwen's voice came from the other end of the phone. "Tonight? Yes." Luo Chen readily agreed. Anyway, he was still thinking about what to eat at night. He felt that now his life was almost trouble-free, and if anything, it was to eat something every day, which was undoubtedly the most distressing thing. In the evening of the same day, Luo Chen went to Stacy's house for an appointment, and it was Gwen who opened the door. Seeing Luo Chen, Gwen's little face showed a look of surprise, jumped in front of Luo Chen, and then shouted into the room, "Mom, Teacher Luo has arrived." A moment later, in the room, Mrs. Stacy came out and greeted Luo Chen and said, "Teacher Luo, take a rest first, I'll be ready right away." "Okay." Luo Chen was also not polite, sat down directly, and talked to Gwen. Listening to her chattering about various interesting things in the school, and looking at Luo Chen shyly from time to time, her coquettish look was also very interesting. After another while, the door of the room was opened, and a middle-aged man with blonde hair and blue eyes walked in, and when he saw him, Gwen quickly got up and shouted, "Dad." "Hello Mr. George." Luo Chen got up and said, "You are Teacher Luo." George Stacy glanced at this Asian teenager, and then at her daughter, who had a red face, and immediately understood why her daughter mentioned this teenager in front of her more than once. It is indeed very handsome, even in the eyes of men. This is a very handsome youth, especially Luo Chen, as a Chinese person himself, looks young. If not deliberately dressed mature, he will even be considered a 17 or 18-year-old teenager. Such a teenager, it is normal to let his daughter's love door first open. "Yes." Luo Chen nodded. "Thank you for helping Gwen academically." George said with gratitude. "Dad, why did you come back? It's late again." Gwen said in disgust. "It's not that Superman yet, and he beat a group of people to serious injury. I just went to deal with this matter." George took off his coat and said, "He gets us in trouble all day, don't catch him for me." When Luo Chen heard this, it was still because of his daytime chivalry, and he couldn't help but laugh. "Dad, that's a superhero, we have more fans in his class." Gwen retorted dissatisfied. "What a superhero, he is just a self-righteous vigilante. If everyone messes around like him, then what else do you need the law to do? What do you want the police to do? And beat people into serious injuries at every turn? Definitely not a good person." George said nonchalantly. "But those who were injured by him are some bad people, and there are many people who are harmed by them." Gwen puffed out her little face, retorted her father dissatisfied, and said, "Obviously, on the issue of treating Superman, the father and daughter have completely different views. Gwen is the opinion of the general public. The existence of Superman completely improved the security of the vicinity, because those gangsters, drug dealers or other underworld forces who are the scourge are basically cleaned up by Luo Chen, or completely lose the ability to be evil, or flee the vicinity. After all, Luo Chen is very salty, and so far, the place where he acts to maintain law and order is near his place of residence. Before he had evolved the ability to fly too far, he didn't want to go, and now he thinks about Tony Stark being kidnapped every day. Now Luo Chen's mentality is like Tony Stark. If you want to say that bad people can't talk about it, you have to say that there is also a good heart, and you are willing to do some good deeds within your ability. In Tony Stark, that is to donate money to charity, and in Luo Chen, it is to do some chivalry in his own home. So Luo Chen is an ordinary person, and Tony Stark was also an ordinary person before, and it was a series of things later, and there were a series of crises, which pushed him step by step to the level of being a god with a mortal body. This is not only the combat power of the gods, but also its own will. It can be said that Tony Stark before becoming Iron Man and Tony Stark after becoming Iron Man are simply two people. Now Luo Chen is also in a state of no transformation, and now listening to the conversation between the father and daughter, it is somewhat embarrassing. After all, he is talking about himself. Gwen is an ordinary person, and he has seen a lot of the corrupt security conditions in New York on weekdays. After all, it is not a day or two, especially ordinary people outside the non-rich area, which often encounter various social events. But for Luo Chen, it's not strange. This is where, more than 10 years later, it is even more outrageous. After the correct and thorough popularization of Zhengji, then public security can be regarded as ushering in a wave of blood collapse. By that time, robberies, shootings were the beautiful scenery of the streets that could be seen every day. However, for an old policeman like George, a vigilante like Superman is a group of people who are really forbidden by martial arts, and a bad one will evolve into a super criminal. In the camp he represents, he inherently hates such people. Then it is not his turn to impose private punishment. George said, very dissatisfied. "Teacher Luo, what do you say?" As soon as Gwen turned his head, he turned to Luo Chen. Luo Chen was also a little dumbfounded. What does this matter have to do with him? The answer is that it doesn't matter. However, Luo Chen still pondered for a moment, and then spoke. "I wonder what Mr. George thinks. What is the law for?" "The law is to protect people who have done nothing wrong." George spoke. "Yes, the law is to protect people who have not done wrong, so when the law does not protect these people, should these people wait for death?" Luo Chen asked. "Where is there anyone who is not protected by law?" George spoke. "Lighthouse country is a capitalist society, Uncle George knows, so different neighborhoods, patrol and garrison forces are the same. What is 1% of the resources available to a poor community?" Luo Chen asked again. George immediately understood what Luo Chen meant. In the lighthouse country, this is a very common phenomenon. The richer the neighborhood, the higher the fee charged, and the more it can be used on the police station in this area. Naturally, the police station in this area can recruit more people, update equipment, and the local security will be better. And some poor communities, where can there be money to donate? So the existence of the local police is very weak, and some famous places like Hell's Kitchen, the police are so 3 or 5, criminals are thousands of times their number. What can they manage? I couldn't care about anything at all, and I didn't even dare to send someone in. And this is the essence of capitalist society. Only if you have money, you can enjoy the resources of this society. This is too common in lighthouse countries, and even when the fire department encounters a fire, it will only glance at whether the place has fire insurance, and where there is no fire insurance, it will even let him burn it clean. In this case, ordinary people in poor neighborhoods are counting on the police. Can they count on it? This is also why so many superheroes as vigilantes can have such a big market. So whether the so-called order is important, or the security needs of the people are important, I think Mr. George should know it. Luo Chen said slowly. Yes, that's right, that's the truth. Gwen quickly nodded and said. Luo Chen glanced at Gwen and saw that she immediately showed a blushing expression, and sighed in his heart that it was not for nothing that Gwen was able to become a Spider-Woman later. Her concept is actually more similar to that of the later Peter Parker. Okay, don't talk about it, come in and eat. Mrs. Stacy Dooley interrupted the trio's discussion. Luo Chen shrugged his shoulders and followed George and Gwen into the restaurant to eat. After eating, Luo Chen didn't stay much and left directly. After returning home, Luo Chen thought of the conversation between the two fathers and daughters today, and his heart suddenly felt and began to diary today. Anyway, he wrote a diary, basically thinking of where to write. There was no planning at all. Anyway, no one saw it, complained, naturally wanted to write how to come. He even wrote some words from his heart, and if he knew that the diary was seen, he couldn't write it that way. Serious people who keep a diary. Listening to George and Gwen's father-daughter dialogue today, what does a superhero mean to ordinary people? When watching superhero negatives in my previous life, I often could only see these superheroes upgrading to fight monsters, acting chivalrously, and being refreshed, but after coming to this world, I found that the existence of superheroes, for ordinary people, may have a time to save them from fire and water, but when these superheroes are affected, there are not a few. No wonder later after the Ultron era event, there will be the birth of the superhero registration bill. After all, These superheroes save the world not once or twice, but the world is not in crisis once or twice because of these superheroes. These superheroes are not looking for trouble once or twice. There is a more dangerous timeline than purple potato essence snapping fingers, close black lens bracket.
Superhero Registration Act.
Nick Fury, who got the diary update news for the first time, didn't have time to eat dinner, so he hurried to the office, along with his widowed sister Natasha, and even a few henchmen including Nick Fury, Coulson, the old village chief of the novice village, Agent Hill, and Hawkeye Patton. They are all Nick Fury's own people who can be trusted in S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury also didn't care to complain about why Luo Chen wrote a diary at dinner time, such a non-human operation, because he got up early in the morning to write a diary. It's as if keeping a diary is just a task. People keep a diary to record their day's life. He is good, the diary is used to sign in. Sometimes when I am too lazy to write and have nothing to write, I write 2 words directly on the diary content of the day. How perfunctory is how perfunctory it is. This completely invalidated Nick Fury's idea of getting more information out of it. This bill looks like it's aimed at future superheroes. Coulson spoke. Although the 3 of them did not have a diary, Nick Fury and his widowed sister Natasha also shared the contents of the diary with them, so they also knew. It should be. Nick Fury spoke. It seems that the number of future superheroes is indeed in a blowout state, as this Luo Chen said, otherwise there would be no need for a super soldier registration bill. Several people nodded. About the content of this diary, several of them can be regarded as constant discussion. Any details are not missed. Continuous research, so for many contents of the diary, they are also very clear in their hearts. In contrast, there is a blowout in the number of super criminals. Hill spoke. And it all started with Tony Stark becoming Iron Man. So we're going to keep an eye on Tony Stark and see when he's going to be that Iron Man. Nick Fury said. But recently there have been superheroes, the one called Superman. Coulson spoke. Recently, a superhero called Superman appeared near the neighborhood of New York. Superman. Nick Fury is starting to have a headache, and it seems that the blowout superhero has appeared. So, who is this Superman and what kind of superpowers does it have? I don't know. No one knows who this Superman really is. To be precise, many people only know that he is Asian, but in retrospect, I can't remember the specific appearance, which is very strange. Coulson spoke. We guess that it may be some kind of magic, or witchcraft or something, that can make people who have seen him forget his specific appearance. It's quite discreet. Nick Fury snorted twice and said. And what about his specific abilities? According to the situation we later investigated, as well as the investigation of various traces at the scene, this Superman is worthy of his superhuman name, and should have super speed, super strength, super endurance, and so on beyond the physical qualities of ordinary people. Coulson said. Some gangsters were hit by him, according to our assessment of his whole body bones, at least equivalent to being hit by a heavy truck, as well as broken leg bones, ribs, hand bones, etc. It is not difficult for us to judge that he has super strength. As for speed, everyone said, it is difficult to see how he shot. Anyway, he was lying on the ground, and after all the battles, no one saw him gasp, so it is estimated that he still has super endurance, in terms of physical fitness, much stronger than ordinary vampires and werewolves. Another troublesome character, Nick Fury said. Our evaluation of him is much more than that of ordinary vampires and werewolves, because those gangsters, who were killed by him, were not killed by him. At most, they were seriously injured, completely abolished the strength of the whole body, and they could not bully people in the second half of their lives, so we assessed that he did not shoot with all his strength in a fit of rage, but shot with restraint. Coulson continued. He punished these criminals as he saw fit. Some had their hands removed, some had their feet removed, some were paralyzed. Anyway, so we estimated that his strength should be far more than these, maybe even stronger than the Daywalker and Blade Warrior that we had been paying attention to before. How about with Hulkby? Nick Fury asked. It's hard to say, but at least one point, Hulk can't control his strength and anger, but this person can. But the more angry the Hulk, the stronger his combat power, and over time, Hulk's combat power is definitely stronger than this person. Coulson said. There is too little information known at present, the source of this person's super speed, super strength, and super endurance. I don't know whether it is scientific transformation or magic transformation. Go back and summarize a report to me. Nick Fury ordered. Okay, boss. Coulson nodded. Let's read on. The superhero registration bill should be a bill added by the future government in response to the increase of these superheroes. Nick Fury said analytically. Everyone nodded. This is not difficult to analyze, it is very simple. They all know very well that for all countries, even if they are heroes who act chivalrously, their existence is actually very difficult to control. Because the distinction between superheroes and supercriminals is actually very blurred, just like people, the transition between good people and bad people is often very fast. So although there is not a lot of evidence to refer to, superheroes are not ordinary people, many are ordinary people with superpowers. For example, Tony Stark, according to the diary, is just an ordinary person with a war armor, and these people's views of good and evil can change at any time. So superheroes may be superheroes in the eyes of the public, but in the eyes of officials, superheroes and supercriminals are only a thin line apart. Moreover, when superheroes are doing their righteousness, the damage caused by them are much smaller than those of supercriminals. For example, the Hulk is the most typical example, abhorring the killing, causing a large number of deaths and injuries, and the destruction of countless buildings. With the current administrative efficiency and building efficiency of the lighthouse country, that block has only been cleared for several years. But could it be that the Hulk will cause less damage than him? The damage caused by the Hulk is actually similar, and even when it comes out of military capture, the damage caused by the Hulk is equally amazing. Of course, if it weren't for the Hulk's destructive power, he wouldn't have been targeted by Nick Fury. Such a big man, if he is his own person, he is still very good, he can beat the enemy to the ground. Of course, his own home will also be smashed. They themselves are also official people, naturally very clear about the official thinking. If these superheroes can be controlled, they will not be stingy. But this matter has little to do with them, because it is officially promoted, and they can only be regarded as semi-official, above all intelligence organizations, but again, they are not the intelligence agencies of any country. Age of Ultron. Inside the New York building, Tony Stark saw the word Ultron in his diary again, and added the word era. What does this mean? It shows that the Ultron thing is likely to become the name of a big event. It seems that Ultron really caused great damage and became the villain of a certain story. That story is called Ultron Era, right? Tony Stark said analytically. He had been very skeptical before whether Ultron was his artificial intelligence, but now he almost got an affirmative answer. That is, Ultron did cause great damage and became the name of an Ultron Era. Even Luo Chen used a big event to describe the huge impact of the Ultron Era, and even the birth of the Superhero Registration Act later. Superhero Registration Act. Tony Stark is not the same Tony Stark who has gone through the vicissitudes of the future at this time, so he can't approve of this superhero registration bill at all. He could already tell from the name alone that it was. But how could Tony Stark, who threw Tony Stark directly at the Congressional Advisory Meeting, accept this kind of superhero registration bill? This is a violation of freedom. Tony Stark couldn't help but whisper. How can such a bill on human rights violations be passed? He is a typical lighthouse countryman and a big capitalist, born distrustful of the official, and when he sees such a registration bill, he instinctively has a huge disgust. But sir, since this bill can be passed, it must have a considerable degree of public opinion, otherwise, Congress will not be able to pass it, and perhaps something unpredictable will happen in the future. Jarvis reminded. Yes, something big must happen in the future, that is, this Ultron Era. If our previous guess is correct, Ultron is an artificial intelligence created by me, then Ultron Era may be a crisis of intelligent machinery, and may even involve multiple superheroes, so this bill will be born. Tony Stark couldn't help but say. Moreover, superheroes, in the eyes of the public, can really be considered human. Tony Stark thought of the Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, and Hulk, Abomination mentioned in the diary. If the so-called superheroes are all like that, extremely violent, and very destructive, then ordinary people can really see these superheroes as their own. If it is not my race, its heart will be different, and it is not only the Chinese people who have this idea. Yes, sir, the birth of the superhero registration bill may be related to the crisis caused by these superheroes. As mentioned in Luo Chen's diary, superheroes have nothing to do, not even once or twice, and the confrontation between ordinary people and superheroes in the future should be very serious. Jarvis said. Yes, it's okay. Tony Stark smiled self-deprecatingly. In Luo Chen's eyes, he probably created Ultron with nothing to do, and then caused a series of dangers. And this purple potato essence snapped his fingers. This is the second time Luo Chen mentioned this matter in his diary. Perhaps, this finger-snapping thing means some kind of very terrible catastrophe, so it will be repeatedly mentioned by Luo Chen. Jarvis spoke. Yes, if it was an ordinary thing, it wouldn't make Luo Chen so jealous. Snap his fingers. What, snap your fingers? Is this not really finger-snapping, but some kind of metaphor? Tony Stark also thought with a bit of a headache. Because Luo Chen's diary uses a lot of memes that seem to be understood only by people outside the fourth wall, and he thinks he is humorous. As a result, he, the person who reads the diary, only feels extremely headache, and he can't get the information he wants from these words. Really, can't he keep a good diary? It's a very bad habit to mix so many messy terriers inside. Hawkeye Barton couldn't help but complain. Who is this second mentioned purple potato essence? What does snapping fingers mean, and who are those superheroes who have nothing to do? At this time, in the office of S.H.I.E.L.D., these people looked at Luo Chen's words, and they all felt very speechless, mixed with a large number of incomprehensible metaphors and words, which were simply outrageous. If he could, he really wanted to find Luo Chen and beat him. It must be a very, very important thing. Nick Fury said. This purple sweet potato essence must be some very powerful villain. Snapping his fingers may refer to the ridicule of something he did. As for the major events of the Ultron era, there is still no clue. I don't know what it refers to. But don't you think that the real danger is the timeline that Luo Chen said is more dangerous than the purple potato essence snapping his fingers? Widowed sister Natasha said. This matter of purple sweet potato essence snapping fingers has been repeatedly mentioned twice. Obviously in Luo Chen's heart, it should have a very important position. I am afraid that it will affect the world, and may even affect the major events of the universe, but there is actually a more dangerous timeline than this. What will it be? He mentioned the concept of timelines. At this point, Agent Hill finally found an opportunity to interject. This seems to be different from the concept of parallel universes. Physically, everyone's different choices will give birth to different parallel universes, but the concept of timeline may be something else. For example, if a key node in history is changed, a new timeline will be born. Nick Fury thought about it, maybe such a concept. For example, in World War II, the Lighthouse Nation was defeated. For example, if the Lighthouse State lost the war for some reason in World War II, and the Axis power won, for whatever reason, a completely different timeline from what we have now may be born. I think, what Luo Chen's diary says should mean this. Nick Fury said. Several people nodded one after another. It seemed that this was indeed the case, and it was more correct to analyze it like this. But what kind of danger could be more dangerous than snapping his fingers with purple sweet potato essence that he mentioned twice? A new timeline, another new concept, hee. If it is sent to the physics community, it will probably explode now. Tony Stark said. It's parallel space-time again. It's an isotope of parallel space-time, and now a new concept of timeline has emerged. How many more surprises does he have to give me? Tony Stark himself has a deep knowledge of physics, so he can fully imagine how sensational it will be once the masters of physics hear about this concept. But what could be more dangerous than that purple potato essence snapping his fingers? Tony Stark paused. A passage continued to emerge from the diary. A more dangerous timeline than purple sweet potato essence snapping fingers. That's too much. In the comic universe, which of these guys can't restart the universe, which can't destroy the universe? It's too scary. Fortunately this is not a comic universe, otherwise I'm really afraid of being punched to death by the Hulk. Gee. But even in the movie universe, The level of force is much lower, cannot be taken lightly. If it is the timeline of the zombie universe, it is really finished. All the staff become zombies. Even Purple Potato Essence cannot escape. Iron Man is the first to be cut off. All have to die. There are so many abandoned timelines. Each one is terrifying. Close black lens bracket. Luo Chen's words appeared in the diary, and the amount of information contained in his words made Tony Stark's braincase explode almost the moment he saw it. Because they previously speculated that this so-called Marvel world is a world of stories, a world of series of stories, and most likely a cinematic universe, because he has an actor, the guy named Robert Downey Jr. But that's all speculation, and he may not have a trace of luck in his heart, but now that Luo Chen's diary has emerged, it almost covers this speculation, and there is indeed a movie universe. And he is the Iron Man in the movie universe, Tony Stark. Even Luo Chen also mentioned that there are also comic worlds. It seems that in terms of danger, the comic world is much more terrifying. Any person can restart the universe, and anyone can destroy the universe. He really wants to complain. The screenwriter of the company called Marvel who set up this kind of plot, is his brain really good? Let its comic characters casually destroy the universe. Do you still need logic? It's not scientific at all. Of course, this thing itself is very unscientific. However, it is now certain that the cinematic universe and the comic book universe exist, but they are not the same, and the cinematic universe should be less destructive than the comic universe. It should be that comics can draw all kinds of outrageous settings at will, and if the movie wants to show it, it may be too expensive. Tony Stark said self-deprecatingly. He can now even interpret from the perspective of company operations why the combat power of the movie universe is not as good as the combat power of the comic universe. That is, he must not be as combative as himself in the comic book universe. At the end of the day, isn't it a question of cost? The combat power of drawing comics is already exaggerated, and the combat power of writing novels can be even more exaggerated. Anyway, there is no need to visualize it, you can write it as you want. But making a movie is another matter. After all, it is about cost. Every second of special effects rendering is a large amount, add up to astronomical amounts. Although it is nothing to him, after all, he is super rich, but for the average film company, it is the rhythm of bankruptcy in minutes. Sir, I think you should pay attention to that zombie universe. All members have become zombies. Sir, you will be the first to cut off your head. Jarvis immediately reminded Tony Stark of the main points of the focus. Even that Purple Potato Essence has not escaped turning into a zombie. Yes, this one is more dangerous. Tony Stark reacted immediately, and he felt even more anxious. Now I really want a pair of eyes that have not seen this diary. The more he knows, the more anxious he becomes, and he has to consider the future of alien invasion, superheroes, supercriminals, and God's coming, and now there will be the possibility of all members of the world turning into zombies. He already felt tired. How nice it would be if he didn't know about it. Zombies. This shows that there is probably a danger of zombies lurking in our universe, and if some conditions are met, the timeline will develop towards this line, right? Tony Stark reacted immediately. This zombie universe is most likely a derivative of a different timeline of their cinematic universe. In other words, there is a chance that their future will become like this. Thinking of this, he suddenly felt creepy, covered in sweat and upside down. Yes, sir, theoretically, there is indeed such a possibility. Jarvis replied. Tony Stark narrowed his eyes and said, "This Purple Potato Essence was mentioned by Luo Chen several times. It is likely to be a big boss at a certain stage, but it can't escape this zombie virus. It's really not ordinary. It's a pity that until now, we don't know what caused this zombie." Coulson said. "If we can know what the reason for the birth of this zombie is, we can solve it in a targeted manner. Although our future is unlikely to become like this, does Luo Chen mean that one of our futures points to this zombie universe, and we have a chance to become zombies in the future?" Hawkeye Barton asked. "Literally, that's what it means." Nick Fury nodded. "I just don't know if it's the result of a certain biochemical experiment, and I don't know what kind of research those scientists have to be satisfied. But the most important thing is that there is not only one timeline, there are many. Widowed sister Natasha said. In other words, we may now face at least two timelines. The first is a relatively normal timeline, that is, it points to the future where the purple potato essence snaps its fingers. Widowed sister Natasha continued. And the second is the zombie universe, and even that purple potato essence has not escaped the future. How do I think? These two may be similar. Hawkeye Barton couldn't help but complain. What's the difference? That purple potato essence snapping his fingers may also be a crisis of the extinction level, and the crisis of this zombie universe may also be, and it makes no difference. What's more troublesome is Luo Chen's description. Nick Fury said. In addition to these two timelines, there is also the so-called abandoned timeline. Are you afraid when you see this word? The timeline is not naturally generated, and there is such a thing as abandonment. Nick Fury feels that the most terrifying thing in this whole paragraph is not the zombie universe where all the members become zombies, but the concept of this abandoned timeline. Discarded timeline. Could it be the timeline? Is there a master? Tony Stark muttered. He deduced from Luo Chen's words in his diary that made him feel almost instantly creepy. Timeline has masters. In other words, someone is watching the timeline, someone is picking the timeline. In short, it means that the timeline may not be naturally generated and developed, but a process of someone selecting. At present, the timeline revealed in Luo Chen's diary, in addition to the so-called abandoned timeline, is two. One is the timeline pointing to the purple potato essence snapping fingers, and the other is the zombie universe. All members have become zombies, and my head will be the first to be cut off. Tony Stark said. Every future seems to be very gray, very terrifying, versus a disaster, but Luo Chen did not call these abandoned timelines. That is, the abandonment of the timeline may not be dominated by us, not the end of the earth. This timeline is meaningless, so what factors determine the meaning of the existence of this timeline? Thinking of this, Tony Stark's brain is about to explode. The amount of information is too large, and the big one is a bit outrageous. Parallel universes, isotopes of parallel universes, timelines, new timelines, abandoned timelines, too many concepts. Wait, I'll straighten out the concept first. Tony Stark couldn't help but pace left and right in the room. Different choices will produce new timelines, and new timelines may produce different parallel universes, but parallel universes do not mean that they are all new timelines. Tony Stark muttered. For example, the cinematic universe and the comic universe are both parallel universes, but they are not based on the same thing derived from the timeline, and they are both movie universes. Our Marvel universe is the 1999 universe, and the X-Men universe next door. It seems that they are not the same. This is a completely different parallel universe. There is a connection between each other, but there is not much connection. In addition, it is a new parallel universe based on the division of the timeline, and these things may be derived from human choices, so Luo Chen here is not using the concept of parallel universes, but the concept of timeline. Tony Stark said. Immediately he began to roughly draw on the projection on the desktop, drew a tree, and continued. If we think of the timeline as a tree, then the different timelines should be from different branches of this tree, and the difference between the comic universe and the movie universe, the 1999 universe and the X-Men universe, should be different trees, which will not normally intersect with each other, only at certain times, such as when the screenwriter outside the fourth wall needs it. Having one of the actors make a cameo appearance in another universe, it's really a shame that they can think of this. It's a play on these concepts. So we assume that these trees have owners, so this owner is choosing from moment to moment, which branches are crooked, and cut off this branch, which is the so-called abandoned timeline. Tony Stark felt as if he had found a pattern. So, is the reopening of the universe mentioned here uprooting the whole tree, and then retransplanting the same variety of tree into it, so that he can grow again to meet his expectations? When Tony Stark thought of this, he only felt that himself, no, the whole world, the entire universe, and even the entire multiverse were covered by one hand. What is one hand to cover the sky? This is one hand to cover the sky. Suddenly, I only felt cold sweat on my back. Discarded timelines. Who is manipulating the timeline? Who decides which timelines work and which cannot? Agent Hill asked. Someone in the back. I think it should be. Nick Fury said. I remembered something. Do you remember, in the earliest chapters of Luo Chen's diary, not long after he crossed over, he was worried that his arrival would attract the attention of a person named Ji Yuyi and another named Kong. Widowed sister Natasha said. At that time, we didn't know who this Ji Yuyi and Kong really were, and even used a lot of resources to investigate, and finally came to the conclusion that it may be a figure on the extraordinary side of the earth, which we can't touch, but at that time, Luo Chen, including him now, was just a small transparent, not famous, and even lived a very salty life every day, so why was he so sure that he would attract the attention of these two? Nada, you mean these two are the ones responsible for maintaining the timeline? Nick Fury immediately got to the point and asked. And Luo Chen knows the existence of these two people, and also knows that these two people are responsible for maintaining the timeline, so that the timeline moves in the right direction they feel, and if something is wrong, cut it off immediately. Yes, that's what I meant. Widowed sister Natasha nodded, and then said, don't you think it's strange? People like Luo Chen are all people who are destined to be, in our West, that is the child of destiny. Doesn't he want to make a career in this movie world that he thinks? Why is he so salty? Are you afraid of something? Want to reduce your influence on the timeline to reduce the likelihood of being discovered by someone? I have to say that if Luo Chen is here, he will be shocked when he hears this analysis. Luo Chen didn't know that the things he complained about in the diary, just a few paragraphs, had actually been analyzed by others, and many things had been analyzed. And there are many things that are also close to the truth, and the reason why the rest is not yet known is only because there is not enough information. If he knew, he would know that he could not underestimate the heroes of the world. There are too many smart people under the world. Nada, your analysis is very reasonable. Nick Fury nodded and said. Of course, maybe he was originally an ordinary person's relationship. This Luo Chen, I once found the top psychological expert, according to the diary revealed only a few words, as well as a lot of records of his daily behavior, psychological profile. This is a very ordinary person, no professional training, psychological quality is also very average, so his low profile may just be because he is an ordinary person, or the more he knows, the more he is afraid. About Luo Chen, even Tony Stark can find it. How can Nick Fury not find it? But he doesn't dare to get close, so as not to be punished by the power behind this diary. All in all, Nada's analysis makes perfect sense, the concept of timelines, indicating that it is likely that someone is responsible for maintaining these timelines. Nick Fury spoke. I just don't know what the principles are for maintaining these timelines. What kind of timelines will be discarded? What kind of timelines can survive? If you can't figure out the laws behind this, we could die at any moment. Nick Fury just felt sleepless, and if he couldn't figure out what these timelines meant, then the timeline they were in could be swept into the trash at any time. After all, even Luo Chen didn't know the reason for this, and he didn't know whether the timeline they were in would be abandoned in the end. I'm also curious about what happens to an abandoned timeline. Hawkeye Barton asked with some doubt. People feel even worse, because it means that they may be disposed of like garbage, which is something they absolutely cannot accept. It won't end well anyway. Nick Fury said, especially for a big man like him who has the power of life and death. At this time, he feels like a man, leaving his safety in the hands of others, which is really a very difficult thing for him to accept. This world, as Luo Chen said, is getting more and more dangerous. Agent Hill said. Everyone looked at each other, all still digesting the horror content in this diary update. Teacher Luo has this understanding because of the dialogue between our father and daughter. At home, Gwen had just finished helping her mother wash the dishes when she went upstairs to see an update in her diary. She saw the record in Luo Chen's diary. The purple potato essence snapped his fingers. It seemed to be a very dangerous thing, not to mention, what to restart the universe, what to destroy the universe. These are still good. She felt that if she encountered this kind of thing, at most it was painful, but if she encountered the zombie universe, it was more terrifying. Thinking that herself, and even the people around herself, had become zombies. Just thinking about it made her feel suffocated. In such a dangerous world, it seems that it is becoming more and more important to have the power of self-preservation. Luo Chen didn't know how much shock the diary he wrote down had caused to others. He just sighed. In fact, even the zombie universe is divided into the comic version of the zombie universe and the zombie universe of If. In the zombie universe of the If series, all zombies are zombies rational, although dangerous, but good. But the real horror is the comic version of the zombie universe. Those zombies one by one still have their own brains, but they can't control the desire to devour everything. They will eat everything they can eat in the entire universe, and even have quite high intelligence, create a device to travel through parallel universes, and run to other universes to eat. It can be said that it is terrifying and disgusting. But these two universes he is more worried about if the zombie universe in the series universe, because he should be in the movie universe, so no matter how terrifying the comic version of the zombie universe is, it is difficult to affect him. But if the series exists, it is completely different, because if the series exists, it is a split of the cinematic universe, and every choice may create a completely new universe. It was the danger caused by the Ant-Man family that brought the quantum virus out of the quantum universe, and eventually infected the entire Earth, making the Earth completely turn into a paradise of zombies. But it's still early, and as long as Tony Stark hasn't admitted to being Iron Man, there are still some moments when he can get away with it. But think about it, Tony Stark has also been a bit low-key lately, not at all like his high-profile style. Usually, whether it is on TV, newspapers, or the internet, almost all of them are news that he is doing things everywhere, picking up girls everywhere, and publishing all kinds of golden sentences. But recently, he seems to have disappeared. Could it be that he actually ran to Afghanistan? Luo Chen was a little skeptical that Tony Stark had run to Afghanistan, and the Stark Group was blocking news. But it doesn't matter. Tony Stark is such an important person. If he really disappears, then the Stark Group can't hide it for long. Luo Chen felt the surging power in his body, but it was still far from enough. Although the bloodline of Krypton was very powerful, it was still in the initial stage of development. It's a pity, I can't fly yet, and I can't fly fast enough, otherwise, I would fly to the Eastern Hemisphere to bask in the sun now. Luo Chen said. After he can fly in the future, he can stay in the place where there is the sun, and at that time, the strength will increase and fly. Although his combat power is definitely surpassing them by the American team, his opponent is not the human peak level of the American team, but those non-human existences, even dimensional demon gods, and even the existence of Conqueror Kong who manipulates dimensions and time. But speaking of this, he also has to complain that when Kong the Conqueror first appeared, he was so high and dead, and after the timeline exploded, those Kong who appeared, the performance in Ant-Man 3 was simply outrageous. Just the existence of this level. Finally, can you control the time? Even able to rule the endless universe? This is impossible.